Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 7th, 2021, Union County Public Schools Board of Education. I would like to begin with an invocation from the Union County Sheriff Office, Chaplain Vic Weaver.
Father God, we thank you so much for this chance to be here. The day you have given us the beautiful weather. And Father, we ask now that you would just be with the ones that are being impacted in our community, in our state, our country, and even our world. The ones that are impacted with COVID, with the complications that come from that. The deaths that have just occurred just recently, even today. And Father, we ask that you just be with those families, be with the children in our area that are quarantined because of this dreaded virus. Father, we ask now that you would be with us tonight. Just give us wisdom, give us clear heads, and give us your grace, and let your spirit reign over this body. And we just ask all this now in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you for being with us tonight. If everyone would please know, we're going to do approval of the agenda, Board.
So moved.
Second.
I would like to offer an amendment under number 8. I would like, after C, I would like to add the letter D, a county update from Melissa Merrill and Kathy Heintel, and we will change review of face covering policy to E.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Joe. We have Mr. Morial calling in tonight, everyone. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to policy 1-12, public participation at board meetings. And I'll turn it over to Mrs. Morris.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. This policy came to the policy committee at the last policy meeting and to the board the meeting before that. And the recommendation from the policy committee was that this be approved first thing in the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those, thank you, Joe. So that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to number 3, public comments and the new sign-up process. We have a new online platform, the new process to contact the district central services office to speak during the public comments period is through an online sign-up platform. After each public comment session, the platform will allow for speakers to sign up for the next meeting. Tomorrow, a link will be added to the Board of Education meeting schedule page. There will be an additional link entitled Public Comments on the Board of Education's webpage. On the platform, persons wishing to speak will need to include their name, email address, physical address, telephone number, and the topic. In response to changes made this evening to policy, persons wishing to speak will also need to designate whether they are a UCPS parent, UCPS employee, UCPS student, Union County resident, or other. Each field will need to be completed for the request to be accepted. The platform will not respond with a place on the list of speakers because of the priority categories. Persons wishing to speak will still also be able to sign up at the meeting. Our public comments guidelines are as follows. As there is a waiting list, the board will need to consider whether to expand the public comments period. Is there a motion on the floor to expand the public comments period for up to an additional 30 minutes and a total of 60?
So move.
Second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. At every regular meeting of the board, 30 minutes and now 60 has been allotted for public comments. The board will not respond to public comments. However, a member may ask the chair to obtain clarification. Speakers will be called in the order that they signed up to speak. If a speaker is not present when his or her name is called, the opportunity to speak will be considered waived. Only persons signed up may speak. Speakers may not give their time to another person or have someone speak on their behalf. Individuals may address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. Any person who is an appointed representative for a group may address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes. A representative must state his or her affiliation prior to speaking or will be assigned the 3-minute comment period. The board will not hear in open session complaints about the performance of school personnel, personnel issues, or confidential student issues. Should a speaker wish to seek information or share items that may not be shared during public comments, our staff are available to address your concerns or provide information. Tonight here with us, we have Dr. Brad Breedlove, Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Bashan Harris, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, and Jared McCraw, Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, are here to assist. The first speaker signed up for tonight is Mr. Brian Helms.
Hey, good evening. My name is Brian Helms. I'm the proud father of a UCPS student. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I would like to personally thank this board for all of your prior actions to keep UCPS mask optional. What is easy and what is right are often two different things, and the stance that you have elected to take on masks has not been easy, but it has been right. As we sit here today, Union County is facing a crisis. Make no mistake, this is not a crisis of health, nor is it a crisis of mask wearing. We are facing a crisis of inconsistency and government overreach in regards to discriminatory COVID quarantine protocols. The quarantine protocols put into effect by the state and local DHHS, headed by Dennis Joyner, assume that mask wearing is the solution to all of our problems. These protocols incentivize mask wearing and punish children who choose not to wear them or who can't because, well, you know, the science. The truth is that masks are not beneficial in controlling the spread of COVID-19. The most recent study published in August found that typical masks filter less than 10% of exhaled droplets. You can do the math, but if I was only 10% effective at my job, chances are I wouldn't be employed for very long. Yet even with the question marks in the efficiency of masks, the bozos in Raleigh have incentivized mask wearing with their quarantine policies for children. This should be all across the board, statewide, right? But it's not. Onslow County Public Schools has 36 schools in their system and enrolls just under 27,000 students. Onslow County has been mask optional all year, and despite having higher positive cases than UCPS, they are only under a 10-day quarantine. And on the 5th day of quarantine, students are allowed to return to the classroom with a negative test. No questions asked. Here in Union County, under the direction of Dennis Joyner, local charter schools have been offered the same quarantine protocols. Those students can return early from quarantine with a negative test. Despite having 0 hospitalizations, the offer has not been extended to UCPS. We remain in a 14-day quarantine, and only 0.88% of students have tested positive. Why? Is COVID more deadly in Union County than Oslo County? Is it more dangerous in UCPS than charters? No. Let me be clear. No healthy child should be prohibited from attending school. Furthermore, if this is law, why are the protocol procedures different for school systems across the state? What's fair for the goose should be fair for the gander. These varying policies violate civil rights of children. Would we force otherwise healthy children with cancer to quarantine? How about HIV? As you know, the 14th Amendment prohibits states from violating an individual right. Where is our children's equal protection? We do not have a COVID problem or a mask problem. We have a quarantine procedure problem. There are politicians in this county that want to mask our kids to cover their tails. We do not need more politicians. We need people willing to fight for our children. Don't do what's easy. Do what's right. Keep us mask optional. Give my little girl a chance to go to school. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David Hogstead.
Good evening. My name is Dave Hogstead. I'm a member of Gideon's International and also a resident here in Union County. The Gideon's International organization has been distributing Bibles all over the world for well over 100 years. And we place and distribute Bibles in schools, hospitals, colleges, medical facilities, prisons in over 200 countries and in over 125 languages. The Gideons recently finished doing a huge Bible distribution event in the Philippines and also in India. But we've also recently conducted distribution events in metro locations like Jacksonville, Florida, New York City, Richmond, Virginia. And here in North Carolina this past weekend, we distributed over 1,000 Bibles at the Apple Festival up in Hendersonville. We have similar distribution events scheduled in late September at UNC Greensboro and in late October with the city and surrounding area of Fayetteville. There are a number of past and retired teachers and coaches within the Gideons organization here in Union County that have served in Union County schools. Gideon members are also from various professional occupations, and many are military vets. Gideons are local people and couples who are your neighbors, and we're also your fellow church members. We're not a church denomination, nor are we a club. We are simply men and their wives that are dedicated in serving Jesus Christ and to distributing Bibles to anyone who will accept the free gift. The Gideons distribute pocket testaments or a full Bible with the Old and New Testament. What we're here for tonight is we'd like to ask the board for 2 things. 1, for the board to support Bible distributions for Union County high school students in the school facilities or on school grounds. 2, that we could obtain the board's guidance on how to safely distribute Bibles in the facilities or on school grounds. With our first request of the board's support, we'd like to work with the school administrative staff in conducting distributions in a manner that high school students and any Union County school staff would have the freedom of choice in simply receiving a Bible. Because the Gideons are responsible for the printing of Bibles that we distribute, we can't simply leave them on a table without our presence. We would need to be present to offer or hand out Bibles in person or to have them on a table for to possibly pick it up. With our second request, we realize there are various security issues to consider for any visitors in the school facilities or on the grounds. And do the same, we request the board's guidance on conducting a safe and compliant distribution. In closing, Jesus tells us in John chapter 8, 31, 32, that those who obey and live according to his word will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. We would like the students to have a Bible of their own, free choice, for the opportunity to read and study for themselves about the blessed hope and truth that Jesus Christ provides. We look forward to the board's response. The Gideons will do their utmost to follow your guidance. Thank you for the opportunity to bring these requests to your attention. May God richly bless you. Thank you.
Next speaker is William Howe.
Hi, good evening, board members. My name is William. I live in Union County, Indian Trail. So I just want to start by saying, thank you for your continued efforts in all these processes and the decisions that you have to make. I have seen, and I'm sure you have received multiple phone calls, emails, and social media posts that are threatening in nature and are using upcoming elections to sway your decisions and influence your better judgment. I stand before you today as a concerned parent that is saddened to see the need to continue addressing a topic that should be laid to rest, and that is masking of our children. I am here to tell you, along with many fellow parents and residents of Union County, that we stand behind you. We understand times are difficult, and you have to make difficult decisions. The majority of those in Union County stand with your decision to keep masks optional and to allow freedom of choice, as this is the only way to appease both sides. To a logical person, the management of one's children's medical decisions should be left to the parents and not to the state. Those who would want to force masking of children are making those decisions out of fear. They are making those decisions from a selfish stance, and they are making those decisions based on science that is ever changing with no definitive answers. Fear is a great motivator. And as I mentioned, some of you have most likely received threats of re-election with your stance on mass choice. You have been addressed rudely in these chambers as well, but we should not let fear dictate our decision-making. Fear does not lead to strength, fear does not lead to sound decision-making, and fear has no place in Union County. I can tell you, my family and I were not given the spirit of fear and chose to live in county because we feel that the majority do not live by this said fear. We have traveled to many countries across the world, and we have seen what fear does to a nation. Places like China, Australia, South America, and the like live in fear of the governing bodies that are supposed to protect its citizens. Those countries and many more across the world see the United States as a beacon of light. When oppression is present, they wave the American flag. When they feel threatened, they flee to the United States. When they need political asylum, they craft rafts from debris or pile in shipping containers only to have a chance of making it to the United States of America. I see Union County as that same beacon of light in North Carolina. Our political influence is strong. Our decisions are not based on fear. Our choices are made of sound mind. We can be that example of what happens when personal responsibility and freedom of choice is not taken away from its citizens. I'm running out of time, so I'll skip to my next point. So I just want to thank the board again for their continued efforts in listening to the true residents of Union County and standing firm in their decision for mass choice, listening to our concerns and responding steadfast and without fear or of outside opposition. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Singleton.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Singleton, and I reside in Waxhaw at 2902 Harrington Place. I am speaking as the vice chair on behalf of the Union County Democratic Party. I am a retired human resources and employee relations executive with the Fortune 50 Corporation. One of my responsibilities included working with employees, corporate leadership and attorneys, outside legal counsel, the EEOC, and other federal and state agencies to investigate discrimination and harassment claims and to assure appropriate and legal resolutions. During the last meeting, a board member stated that people needed to speak up about issues versus talking about them in the break room. Ideally, every student, every teacher and staff member should feel comfortable and safe enough to report allegations of discrimination and harassment. But in Union County, that is not the case. Instead, students and teachers of all races and colors, including white, have voiced their lived experiences anonymously because of fear of retaliation, bullying, discipline, ridicule, and termination. At the last two meetings, the board was asked and directed to review the anonymous accounts on Instagram. Have these complaints been reviewed? Have they been investigated? If not, why not? What actions have been taken to ensure all students and parents understand reporting, investigation, and resolution policies and procedures when a complaint is made? There are almost 400 posts from students and teachers from 3 schools. I have read each and every post, and I am floored by the content of them. The posts range from ones of empathy, microaggression, overt racism involving all races and ethnicities for people of color, overt sexism, and sexual harassment. Most shockingly, the posts also include accounts of sexual assault and rape in the bathrooms, which are unsupervised and, of course, free of security cameras. There is no denying that race and sex issues are alive and well in these schools. My time is limited, So I am unable to share the 20 verbatims that I selected and sent to the board on August 6th, along with a request to address these issues. They represent a cross-section of the posted claims of discrimination and harassment. I made copies of the post and will leave a single copy for the superintendent and for any parent who wishes to, or concerned person who wishes to receive a copy following the conclusion of my comments in this meeting. I've got 5 minutes instead of 3. I'm with the Union County Democratic Board. The excuse of ignorance to these issues is no longer acceptable. There are numerous claims of based on race, ethnicity, sex, and religion, both from the legal definitions of quid pro quo and hostile work environment. The excuse that reporting has not occurred falls short of state and federal laws as evidenced by some of these shared accounts.
Ms. Singleton, I apologize. You did not sign up as a representative for the Democrat Party, and our legal advice is that your time has ended. But if you would like to leave your message with me, I'll make sure that all the board members get it, or you can email it to all of us.
Just for the record, Ms. Malaki did confirm.
Ms. Malarkey is with us tonight, and you.
Yeah, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this situation happened once before, and we gave that person the 2 minutes. That
Our
wasn't
legal,
official.
our general counsel just advised us that the time has ended. If
No, she indicated she was the vice chair for the party.
when
And-
she signed up as Cynthia Singleton, not the vice chair of the Democrat Party. The next speaker is UCAE. They will receive 5 minutes because they signed up representing that organization. Elena Brown and Pam Carlton, 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. We were supposed to have more group members here, but they were not allowed to come in at the last moment. They are physicians and parents in Union County on the front lines. So I'm going to read what they had planned to write. This is not written by me, but it's written by the doctors who are part of our group. My name is Dr. Ibokwe and Dr. Patel, and we are both physicians here in Union County and concerned parents of children who attend our great schools here in Union County. We are representing a group of 35 physicians across inpatient, outpatient, and acute care specialties, all with children who attend UCPS schools. Despite our strained work schedules, many of us have been tirelessly corresponding with the school board in recent weeks with clear, consistent recommendations regarding the need for universal masking in our schools, given the alarming rise in Delta variant cases in our area. We have requested collaboration and have offered professional guidance in accordance with all established public health safety standards. Despite this uniform recommendation from all of us, our local health department, NCDHHS, national health advisory organizations, including the CDC and AAP, and the healthcare community at large, 7 of you have repeatedly voted against universal masking. So today we make a public plea to you, the board, and our community. We are here today not to debate numbers or graphs or charts. You all have the data in front of you, and constantly through our various news sources. The facts are that we are in the red zone, meaning we have a high level of community spread of COVID. Our COVID positivity rate is at 17%. And of that 17%, about 20% are children. Currently in our local hospitals, we have 16 children hospitalized due to COVID, and we have 1 child who is connected to a ventilator. So unlike with the Alpha COVID strain, we are now seeing more cases each day in our children with this very contagious Delta variant. This is a public health crisis. I repeat, it is a public health crisis, as we are almost back to the same rates of COVID that we saw last year. Last year, this specific scenario resulted in a shutdown that robbed our children of a complete year of education. It is threatening to do that again, but even worse, as there is no virtual option for the over 5,000 students who are in quarantine within just the first 2 weeks of school. That is unacceptable. We have the same goal. We want our children in school. We want them safe. We want their teachers safe, and we want their families safe. Our children have a right to education. They thrive at school, not just educationally, but physically and mentally. We do not want a shutdown. We have seen numerous times in the past year that the COVID diagnosis not only affects the person diagnosed, but it affects those exposed and could mean a sick parent, grandparent, caregiver, or teacher. Yes, most recover, but let's not forget the over 600,000 who have died from this virus, 260 in Union County alone. For those adults hospitalized, it takes an average of 3 months to recover. While we have been extremely fortunate to have low mortality rates in our pediatric population thus far, we see all sorts of complications in kids and teens, even after mild COVID infection. These range from severe fatigue, exercise intolerance in former athletes, new onset headaches, brain fog, chronic rashes and ulcers, scrotal complaints, persistent loss or alteration of taste smell, and the highest rates of new onset of type 1 insulin-dependent mellitus we have ever seen. We have also had to admit children with MIS-C who display multi-organ involvement 3 to 6 weeks following initial COVID infection. Children may not die at alarming rates like adults, but they can certainly be negatively affected in many ways, and we are genuinely concerned about the possibility of even more virulence with the Delta variant and certainly seeing higher rates of pediatric hospital admission with this strain. Time will tell, but it is so vital we do everything we can to minimize preventable spread in our schools and community until this surge subsides and we learn more. That brings us to masking. When a local community positivity rate is at that level we are currently experiencing, in-school transmission rates also increase. And in such instances, masks prevent children from transmitting this disease onto the community. Masks protect students. Masks protect our teachers teaching these very students every single day. Masks save lives. Masks are one layer of protection in the multiple layers public health officials offer to protect us. Masks work by mitigating transmission of droplets and aerosols and hence reduce risk of spreading respiratory infection to others. They work best when fitted appropriately, worn consistently, and by all parties. In addition to protecting all parties, masks are an expression of regard for others. It is a staple core value in any school community that believes in teaching and practicing social responsibility. They do no harm. To date, there is zero evidence to suggest any health risk whatsoever with prolonged mask usage in individuals who are developmentally and chronologically older than 2 years old. Children are empathetic. They are smart. They imitate. We have a common enemy, and it's COVID. In closing, we are not the enemy, the doctors, that is. Doctors are helping
Thank
us
you very
and our
much for your
families
time.
every
Our
day.
next speaker
And they
is
deserve
the
respect.
Charlotte area
Thank you.
Liberal Moms. They have 5 minutes. Laura Casey.
Point of clarification before I begin, can I go ahead and move this further so there's more distance?
It's been put there by our staff, and no, you may not.
This is not 6 feet of distance, and I would like to be able to remove my
You can
mask.
forfeit your opportunity to speak, but you're not allowed to move what our staff has already measured for our seating and our speaking tonight. If you do not feel safe, then we could invite you back next month.
This continues to be endemic of your disregard.
Who knows? I don't know.
Thank you. Last Tuesday, I shared a difficult story from the voice of a friend and community member describing his experience. Our group wanted to impress upon this board the importance of looking outside of yourselves, especially as you represent an extremely diverse community, one of the most diverse in North Carolina. And we needed you to understand that we cannot continue to turn a blind eye on the things we do not experience, and that in your role as school board members, you need to readily acknowledge and respect that you represent all of the students, parents, and employees of this district, not just the ones that look like, think like, or have the same experiences as you. It is disheartening to come before you month after month and witness you doubling down on harmful behavior. Some history. We had a board member censured by members that sit before me today over his racist commentary and use of the N-word in the execution of his duties, who is now a county commissioner. We had a different member resign last year for his racist remarks and the impact they had on the community, remarks, mind you, that were publicly liked by our chair. I've watched as members of this board speak over people sharing their experience with racism and telling them that racism doesn't exist. And I've seen so many of you make countless excuses for ignoring a problem. I wasn't emailed, no one told me, I don't know. Perhaps don't know because you aren't listening, or perhaps no one talked to you about it because they knew you wouldn't be receptive. And Maybe no one emailed you. Oh, wait, they did. They were greeted with a thank you so much for your email, or worse, a snarky response in their inbox, all while you gleefully talk to members of a conservative PAC. Just last board meeting, I witnessed in horror as a board member in a district that is comprised of almost 20% Hispanic students declare that illegal immigrants from Mexico are coming over sick and infected and ruining our communities, all while ignoring the 50+ COVID cases and school-based cluster occurring that very moment in his own district. Make it make sense, Gary. How do you feel our families feel watching you use Hispanic people and immigrants as an excuse to ignore a problem that you are responsible for and doubling down on exacerbating? Watching you defend a racist dog whistle and including bullying in our schools as a result. And how do you think they feel you are capable of voting for their benefit? This board needs to understand its power, and by power, we do not only mean the ability to make decisions, vote on policy, or determine curriculum. We are speaking about the power and impact of your words. I reminded you our students are watching you, and parents are too. When they are, what kind of example do you think you're setting? Are your examples modeling empathy, understanding, charity, humility? Are you good moral role models? Do our exceptional students or students with disabilities or medical complexities know you feel they are capable and deserving of their accommodations, or are your words telling them that they're a burden, that the safety precautions that they need matter less than a parent's choice to cause them harm? When you speak, do you think you're speaking power into the hearts of our Black, Asian, Indigenous, Hispanic students? What message do you think it sends when the only history you want in the curriculum is the history of trauma? What about the inventors, the entrepreneurs, the literary geniuses, or, for instance, Haitian freedom fighters that fought a revolution to not only overthrow slave masters, but to find sovereignty to control their own country and destiny? And most importantly, why are we so comfortable in protecting white feelings to ensure they don't feel bad learning simple facts about our history or dealing with a little inconvenience from a mask, but not in raising up the different narratives and championing the very needs of the students, parents, and teachers of our district? I often like to use the example of Helen Keller. When you were taught about her, if you were, what was the lesson? See, I was taught she was a wild child who, through the grace of her caregiver and tutor, learned to fingerspell and attend school. And that was it. It paints our caregiver as the hero of the story. And why are we so comfortable with this? Why is a woman with disabilities not the hero of her own story? And she was a hero. She was a bachelor's degree holder from a Harvard program. She founded the ACLU. She assisted in establishing her local New York chapter of the NAACP and continued to send money to Southern chapters through her death. She traveled to over 25 different countries, giving motivational speeches about deaf people's conditions. She was a suffragist. She met with every president from Grover Cleveland to Lyndon B. Johnson, a prolific writer and activist, and she was given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Why do we not learn about this? And can you imagine the difference that would make for students with disabilities to hear about her accomplishments as the primary lesson? The way we talk about things and the way we teach them matters as much, if not more, than what we teach. And this is why we trust teachers, professionals who care about their students, to do their jobs. And this is why I would like to remind you that the most important thing that you have is a platform, and what you were saying while you were using it just as much as the decisions you make. And while we're talking about decisions, I pray you make the right ones. Policy change 3-2A, Employee Code of Ethics, has never been needed, and it's not needed now. It is political grandstanding at best. We need mask mandates and proper procedures to support our students. We have already put our most vulnerable students in harm's way for a political crusade, and we continue to sacrifice students' class time in the name of a culture war. Enough is enough. Your job is to provide equitable, high-quality core instruction to all students as stated in the 2021 strategic plan. Our quarantine
Thank
numbers
you for
support
your
that.
comments tonight. Our next speaker is Mike Richardson.
Good evening. My name is Mike Richardson. I am a native of Union County and an alumni of Piedmont High School. My wife is a teacher in Union County, and my daughter attends CATA. Unfortunately, due to this school board's negligence concerning masking, we had to unenroll my son from Kensington Elementary School. And my wife had to take a leave of absence from her job to homeschool him. My son has asthma, and his doctor said that no way to send him at a mask optional school for this year. I could stand up here and ramble off a bunch of scientific information to you, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stand up here and tell you how mad I am and disgusted I am with the decisions of this board. This board's decision to make mask optional is just appalling to me, and I'm embarrassed as a Union County native and a UCPS alumni. I blame you all for not allowing my son to his education he has a right to based on your recklessness and your political politics. Your personal politics, I'm sorry. You have a duty as a board to serve all the students in this district, and you have failed to do so. My son has not been in a school building since its second grade, and he's in fourth now. He is missing critical and developmental time with teachers and with his peers. We are excited to have him back. We were excited to have him back in school this year and thought the board would do the sensible thing by, making masks mandatory. You did not. Now his education has to suffer. My wife's career has to suffer, and my family has to take a financial hit due to this board's decision. I guess you do not take any of these things into account when you make your decisions. You selfishly vote for a mask optional policy due to your own personal politics. Many of you are in a right-wing group called Moms for Liberty, including the chairperson, Melissa Merrill. I am not sure how anyone can ethically continue to serve as elected officials while being part of such a group. This group has too much influence over the chair and other longtime members. Melissa, you were quoted in an article from WFAE today saying that many parents would withdraw their students if you implemented a mask mandate. Well, Melissa, my family's already done that because you didn't. How dare you guys listen to people that only align with your politics? How dare you do this to my son? How dare you do this to my wife? How dare you do this to this community? Put your politics aside, follow science, listen to the experts, and do your jobs. Protect the students, staff, and community. Thank you.
I would like a clarification that the vote was 7-2, not Melissa Merrill. Thank you. So to be very clear, Melissa Merrill did not ask you or your wife to resign or unenroll your child. That was a parental choice that we have fought for. So thank you so much. Our next meeting, our next person is Cecilia Ho.
Hello, good evening, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Cecilia Ho from Indian Trail, Union County. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'll be brief but concise, so I'll get right to it. First, I want to commend this board for supporting parental rights by continuing to uphold mass choice. Rest assured that even though there are people that are unhappy, most and majority of Union County residents, especially parents, are behind your decision of making mass optional. It is the only choice that makes sense because it allows every individual the right to choose the best non-pharmacological intervention to take to keep themselves and their family healthy and safe without treading on the rights of others to do the same. So thank you for remaining on the side of common sense and respecting parental rights, acknowledging thereby that we as parents ultimately are the resident experts when it comes to our children. Second, and most importantly, I want to urge this board to unanimously pass the amendment on policy 3-2A of UCPS, Employee Code Ethics and Standard of Conduct, which deals with keeping out biased, divisive, and discriminatory teaching from our schools and classrooms. In the last couple of months, we have seen both federal and state legislations against CRT in public schools passed. However, you would think that this will deter would-be violators, but more of them have become emboldened. Examples of these are Gabriel Geip from Indercom High in Sacramento, California, and Leah Kenyon of Leahy High in Utah. If you guys are not familiar with these individuals, maybe y'all will be familiar with what they did, their reprehensible interactions with former students. The former is an outspoken Antifa member who proudly declared, "I have only 180 days to turn these kids into revolutionaries." The latter is a chemistry teacher who went on a 4-minute-long rant shaming those in her class who are unvaccinated while encouraging them to undermine their parents. And she, quote, said, "dumb parents." She even also threatened to make the lives of her conservative students a living hell if they are caught using the not preferred pronoun of their LGBTQIA counterparts. We would be remiss to think that these incidences are limited only to other states. However, we already know and have a litany of evidence that these divisive teachings are occurring in North Carolina classrooms. Here in this very room, in this chamber, we heard passionate testimonies from past speakers who happens to just be CMS teachers advocating for discriminatory tenets of CRT. Let's not be naive to think that what is happening in neighboring school
Thank you,
district
Ms.
will not
Howe.
happen here.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. The next speaker is Dramatic Chambers.
Dramatic Chambers, Union County Public Schools parent. If you knew there was a way to prevent 5,000 plus kids from being in quarantine, would you do it? What if you could prevent a senior who is now in quarantine from missing his first last Friday night football game? What if you could ensure that kindergarten students were able to enjoy their first day in school in a classroom and not in quarantine? 14 days at home, no online school, just Canvas classes. 14 days at home, no sports or peer interaction. What would you do to keep your kids in seats? What is more important than keeping our students in seats? What is more important than your kids' education? Politics and propaganda. The health department told the board that there was an exception this year that would allow our students to be in seats and not quarantined. To reduce the number of students and staff in quarantine, they all would need to be masked. The end. Not one time did the health department mention vaccines. That's propaganda. Not one time did the health department mention fear. More propaganda. The health department told the board there was a way for our students to be in school, and they doubled down, pretended to be confused about the data, and started talking about fear. It is sad. The health department shouldn't have to convince the board to adopt mitigation strategies that would keep our kids in school. And even that fell on deaf ears. I do not care how you align politically, conservative, liberal, Democrat, or Republican. When it comes to our kids, we should all be on the same page. Our kids need to be in school. Anyone placing their own political advancements or agendas ahead of student achievement has no place in making decisions for students. Now, in case anyone is confused, it is the job of this board to do what's in the best interest of all students. Just last year, our board chair talked about suicides and how kids are falling behind online, but now has not blinked an eye as 5,000 students are sitting at home. I am sure people will say, it is on the health department. These quarantine rules are outrageous. Even if that is your thought, you take that up with the health department. But in the meantime, you keep our kids in school. You do not use our kids as pawns to negotiate with the health department. You knew the guidelines of quarantine. You knew optional masking would lead to thousands in quarantine, and you said, oh, well. Now let's walk through the steps. If everyone wears a mask, only the positive case has to stay at home. If a positive kid is not wearing a mask, everyone around that child quarantines. So yes, your parental choice does affect our kids. Unmasked kids cause quarantines. For more hot tips on how your freedoms have affected others, follow up with the 5,000 students in quarantine. Now let's talk about fear. Is wearing a seatbelt living in fear? Is wearing sunscreen living in fear? If you wear a bicycle helmet, are you living in fear? Smart living is not living in fear. It's called common sense. And if you don't have common sense, any type of sense will work for this. Mass work, protect our kids, drop the political charade, and absolutely matter.
Thank you. Our next
Bye.
speaker is from Moms for Liberty. They will receive 5 minutes. Speaker Brittany Bolden.
Good evening, Brittany Bolden from Weddington. I get that there have been people here tonight that have talked about doctors. They read a letter from a doctor, and those doctors, many of them align with the approved narrative that that everyone's kind of aligning with these days. And unfortunately, though, you need to know that there are many highly credentialed doctors who disagree. This is a letter that I have from a local highly credentialed doctor who disagrees. I appreciate the school board's decision to make masks optional in Union County. This seems to be the only rational decision based on hard science and objective evidence. There are over a dozen randomized controlled studies dating back to early 2000s that have repeatedly shown that masks are not effective at reducing the transmission of viral respiratory illness. The WHO published a paper in 2019 that had reviewed 10 separate randomized controlled trials examining the effectiveness of face masks in stopping the flu transmission. That's available viral pathogen very similar to COVID-19. The conclusion was that there was no evidence that face masks are effective in reducing transmission. Yet the toolkit used to keep kids out of school repeatedly reviews masks as a magical barrier and punishes kids who don't wear one. This is not following the science and it has no objective basis whatsoever. There really is not any debate at all on the futility of cloth masks. All they do is trap in bacterial pathogens, and the condensation from breathing creates a culture plate for bacteria to grow. Masks also, in general, interfere with focus and cognitive abilities of our children at a time when we should be nurturing them and not intimidating them because of fear from adults. COVID-19 has an incredibly reduced impact on our children, less than the flu. And we never do this during the flu season. To this point, of more than 600,000 recorded deaths during this pandemic, only 361 have been under the age of 18. That is 0.0006. And that doesn't even take into consideration comorbid conditions such as obesity or diabetes. To put that into perspective, during the 2018-19 flu season, which is a shorter time from COVID, there were 477 pediatric deaths. Even if you look at the numbers of North Carolina, as of our last reporting period, Union County Public Schools had 337 positive cases. That's 0.75% of our students. Were you aware that at least 29 counties in our state who have more restrictive rules on masks, many mandating masks since the very start of school, have higher rates of positivity and spread, some as much as 2 times our rate? A few of them are New Hanover, Iredell, Statesville, Rowan, Salisbury, Catawba, Cleveland. I could keep going on. Are we going to start masking and having toolkits every year? Will children ever be able to go to school and not wear masks? When do we stop the fear? Children need social interaction, facial expressions, and maskless interaction with their peers and teachers to grow and learn. I think we are all able to agree on that. So why are we doing this to our children? This gets me to the toolkit recommended by the CDC with zero scientific support, by the way, and for some arbitrary reason was adopted by Union County. One of the main premises of the toolkit is that masks work. Well, as I have pointed out above, if you do your research and follow the science, you should know that they do not. Not one study can be found that supports the use of masks in children. The toolkit also devalues natural immunity. It only allows for an arbitrary 3 months of protection, despite the Cleveland Clinic study that showed natural immunity lasts at a minimum of 8 months and probably longer. In fact, Israel just came out with a study that shows natural immunity is 13 times greater, yes, 13 times than vaccinated immunity, and is more robust in covering more variants and lasts at least 7 months, but probably longer. So why hasn't the CDC or Union County changed its guidelines? Are we not following the science? Why are our healthy children made to sit out of school for 10 to 14 days following exposure? This is also arbitrary with no scientific basis. If the new Delta strain has an incubation of 48 to 72 hours, why are we asking kids to sit out of school for longer than 3 days? If a child does not have any symptoms, why can't we just use common sense and basic clinical knowledge and get them back in school? Can't pediatricians clear our children to return to their education? Has this ever been looked at? Seems to me we should have a lot of data points to see if this strategy of quarantine has provided any benefit. Have we really prevented any infections at all? Enough to justify the loss of face-to-face time? We all know that children rarely have severe disease, as I noted above, and it has been shown over and over again that children do not spread the virus efficiently. We should be taking advantage of this fact and keep our kids in school, not be forcing them to lose more time away from their educators. Healthy children should not be punished because the adults in the room are unable to do the right thing.
Thank you.
And this was to the Department of Health.
Our next speaker is Jessica Cook. I'm not sure who's speaking from the back of the room. So Justine Libby. Would you like to speak next? Okay, Justine Libby. I apologize.
You want me to sit down?
Yes, please. We'll let Justine Libby speak.
Justine Libby, checking in. Before I begin, I'd like to say, I'm going to screw this up, Lashana Tova to the Jewish members of our community that are either here tonight or tuning in tonight. Would you hold this meeting on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? Please think about our broader community. and look at it from a diverse lens and work on scheduling things around everybody's holidays, not just the Christian ones. When I first came to speak to this board, I detailed how many times I had reached out to board members and that I was largely ignored. I spoke about 3 board members and their involvement with a PAC and how engaged they had been there. Since then, I've heard countless stories from other members of the community who have had similar experiences or responses that were unprofessional, belittling, dismissive, and even threatening. As this week begins, we have over 5,000 kids in quarantine. Parents, we are united on this fact. Kids belong in the classroom. We all want our children to be in school and safe. Unfortunately, the best way to achieve this is through a mask mandate. Our community deserves representation like Reverend Kirkpatrick, who holds open town hall style meetings with people in his district. Our community deserves to be served by people like Reverend Kirkpatrick and Joe Moriali, who upon further evidence and examination had the humility to reverse course on the mask mandate. Many people like to use the phrase, government goes to those who show up, as a call to action. But actually, government goes to those who vote. Gary Sides in District 3 is up for re-election in 2022. Vote him out. Our chair, Melissa in District 4, she is up for re-election in 2022. Vote her out. Our vice chair from District 6, Kathy Heintel, representing Marvin and Waxhaw, up for re-election in 2022. Jimmy Benchin, up for re-election in 2022. And then I ask that you keep your eye on those who are ready in 2024. Vote them out. The majority of this board has shown itself to be more interested in a political grandstand than the safety and education of our children. It's time to show them the door. Gary Sides said it best in response to a parent's concerns recently. He told them, you can run for school board. Community, find candidates to run for office that truly have a vested interest in our community and our children. Do your homework and vote in 2022. Hopefully, I won't have to see you any more Tuesdays after this.
You need to stop with that, okay?
It's Tuesday.
That's derogatory, and we're not going to put up with it.
Madam Chair, I move that this woman no longer be allowed to speak in public comments before this board.
That's not okay.
It's Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
So that everyone understands the vile comment that was just made by Justine Libby. She and others at last public comments last month. I was not present. I was moving my child into college. They are continually approaching this board and saying, see you next Tuesday, which is what she laughed at us just now and did it again. So if anyone would like to know what see you next Tuesday means, that will help everyone understand why we no longer would like to give Justine Libby 3 minutes of another parent or employee's opportunity to speak. If you don't understand what that means, and if you can't Google it, you can reach out to our board and we'll explain it to you. The next speaker is Jessica Cook. Ms. Cook, I want to apologize for calling you earlier. You can see what we're dealing with, but thank you for allowing her 3 minutes, and we welcome you back to the podium.
Thank you. No problem whatsoever. Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. I'm here to plead with you about the quarantine rules, specifically about those in regards to being contact traced. Now, I know none of you made the rules, but we do know that all the rules are very arbitrary and ridiculous. We know that they're set up to force masking. Last year, the school was required to follow the toolkit, but this year it's just guidance. But now, for some reason, the Union County Health Department is requiring even stricter quarantine rules than the toolkit. When a child is contact traced, according to the paper that they get from the school nurse, which this is it right here, it explicitly says, your child will not be able to return to school earlier than 14 days, even if they are tested. 14 days of quarantine is the one and only option. Why are we not allowed to prove by means of a test or antibodies with natural immunity, being asymptomatic, or having had COVID prior to 3 months, that our children are not a threat? This is to force masking by the health department. As many have talked about the quarantine, according to the dashboard, 5,208 students are currently out of school right now and placed in quarantine, but that number is grossly exaggerated with perfectly healthy children. We finally got information from the health department, and only 99 of that 5,208 ended up testing positive. That means that 5,109 healthy students are being denied an education for no lawful or science-backed reason because of the health department. Many parents are also saying that their kids are being pulled out in quarantine when they just have allergies. This cannot go on. So obviously we must do something about it. But putting masks back on our children's faces again is not the solution to stopping the lunacy. The solution is to stop following the draconian quarantine rules from the health department. This is being implemented by a Mr. Joyner who's not even a medical doctor. So what if this board says, we're not going to follow Mr. Joyner, we're going to make our own decisions? What would happen? Have you talked to the attorney and your lawyers about that? I know some on the board have said that you may lose your limited liability protections, but we know that that's not true because according to state statute, you are authorized and empowered to waive your governmental immunity and get your own insurance if you choose to go that route. Well, COVID is here to stay, just like the common cold. It will never be eradicated, but we can't go on like this. Our children's civil rights are being violated. I want to remind you of the nurse back in 2014 named Casey Hickox who sued the government when she was quarantined. She tested negative for Ebola, but the government made her quarantine anyway, but she fought back and she won because she was unlawfully quarantined. So I'm asking you tonight to join us in this fight, intervene. Together we can say enough is enough to the quarantine. Do what is right for our children.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Melissa Vilanowitz. Close enough, maybe?
Many of you have heralded parent choice as the ultimate factor when it comes to masking. Parent choice is important, but it's not absolute. Unfortunately, you've taken my choice away. When my 2 elementary-aged kids leave my sight in the morning, I no longer get to choose whether or not they're wearing masks. Further, the teachers in their school aren't allowed to say anything to them about masking. Even if my child has a mask under her chin or hanging from her ear, meaning I sent her to school with one, the teacher can't ask her to put it on properly. So really what you've done is given my 8 and 10-year-olds choice. That's irresponsible. The responsible thing to do would be to try to help curb the massive community spread going on right now. Instead, our schools are fanning the flames. Finally, to the point that kids aren't affected by COVID or that masks don't work, the overwhelming majority of doctors are telling us that more kids are ending up in the hospital and that masks should be worn. How about we base our choices on facts and statistics, not redacted studies or fringe studies? I suspect that you probably already have your minds made up. I hope that you're listening and hearing all of the stakeholders in this county, but I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. So I'd like to spend my final moments directing my words to the teachers, staff, bus drivers, administrators, and school nurses. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. I see you. Teachers, I know some of you are quarantined or worse, sick because of situations you didn't have control over. I am so sorry. I know you're doing the right thing, and I wish the county were doing right by you. I see you trying to teach our kids to be well-rounded citizens of the world, and I hear this board talk as if your classroom needs to be micromanaged. I know, and others do too, that you are professionals, that you've completed countless hours of training, and that you know what you're doing. Plus, if someone has time to nitpick every worksheet you use, I'd be shocked. I'd suggest they cover some classes or run a bus route. Nurses, I see you making endless phone calls trying to do proper contact tracing. It is infuriating to hear of kids and parents being dishonest about whether or not they were masking and knowing that they're putting other kids and families at risk. Thank you for carrying on and not holding it against those kids. After all, they're just acting their age. Administrators, I know you're trying to keep your faculty, staff, and students safe. I appreciate your efforts, and they are not unnoticed. Bus drivers, as if your job wasn't already hard enough. Sometimes it feels like we parents must be actively working against you. We aren't all out to make your lives harder, and we appreciate you. Board, these professionals are what make UCPS where we want to send our kids. Please don't.
Thank you
Shana
very
Tova.
much.
Happy New Year.
The next speaker is Richard Daunt.
Good evening. I think you guys know where I stand on masks already, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we seem to be approaching these problems. We seem to be getting distracted from what really matters, which is hospitalizations and deaths. There's all this focus on cases, right? And we imagine that we can stop a virus. We like that idea. Yeah, we can all work together and stop a virus. But have we actually really measured to see if we can do that or not? Believe me, people are measuring and they're not finding any evidence that we can do that. I'm not a medical professional, and people can find doctors from one side or another to say different things, but we can't do things just based on what some authority says. We have to try and find objective reality. Look at the numbers. The numbers of the cases, if you want to go by those, we've seen higher cases in places with stricter rules, lower cases in places with more relaxed rules. To me, cases don't mean nearly as much as hospitalizations and deaths, right? So let's look at hospitalizations and deaths. For kids, there's almost no deaths. Hospitalizations are so small, barely measurable. In my job, computer science, when we want to make a change that's going to affect a lot of people using their computers, we don't just blast it out there. We test it first. That's what we've done as a society with masks, is we just blasted it out there, and we don't want to admit that we've done something wrong. Back to my job, we do a test, we get a test group and we see what happens, we analyze the numbers, we go carefully. We have not done that with masks. And I just want to thank you guys for your wise consideration and your wise decision to keep masks optional. And I ask you please to stay strong and continue with that policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Denise Daunt.
Denise Daunt, Waxhaw, Union County resident and parent of UCPS students. Thanks to the quarantine policies of our public health director, thousands of healthy kids are being denied an education. Of the 5,000 kids who were quarantined, only 99 subsequently tested positive. The quarantine numbers are not being driven by sickness. They are driven by the quarantine policies. We have sent you the numbers clearly showing that we do not have unusually numbers of sick children. The numbers are also driven by mass confusion. Nurses at the school are finding any excuse to send kids home thanks to the mass paranoia that is being sown. We need to end the quarantines and the mass testing and go back to, if you are sick, stay home, and sensibility practices. All over Europe, schools are going back without masks. What are we doing here in America, supposedly the land of the free and the home of the brave? We're trying to control the spread of a virus that does not even move the needle on mortality. Did you know the average age of death from COVID is the same as the average age of death from any cause? How can we claim to be saving lives? when we are honestly ruining lives. Our children's lives are being destroyed. Milestones are being negated. Their education is not going as it should. What is the exit plan for these policies, considering that highly vaccinated countries such as Israel have seen large resurgences in cases? If you think the virus is going away, get ready to mask and vaccinate for the rest of our lives. As a parent, I feel like we are being threatened by medical gangsters run by a protection racket. Nice schools you have there. It would be a shame if something were to happen to them. Better mask up. These policies are not about public health. They are about forcing masks on our children and taking away people's rights. And we, the parents, will not stand for it. We know masks do not stop anything from spreading, and we will not allow our children to be used as political pawns. Our district voted for mask choice. If there are families that want that, they have the choice to wear one mask, two masks, as many masks as they want. If a parent demands their child to do that, that should be on them, not on the school. Just like I demand my children to do their homework, that is my job. I don't think it's the teacher or the school's job. If you think we're fired up now, you're going to have to wait because the fight has only begun. We are not going to back down from this. This is not about left or right, Democrat or Republican. It's about up or down, civilization or savagery. Which side are you on? We are patiently waiting and watching, and we thank you for everything that you are.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sandra Green.
Good evening. I'm the parent of a UCPS student. I live in Indian Trail. My daughter's 9 years old and she's got severe allergies. And I could not believe when I looked at the toolkit that I saw cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, sore throat. This is my child's everyday life. This is my everyday life. I don't know if y'all saw the pollen count this week. I've been coughing like a beast, but I don't have COVID. I'm a healthy person. And I'm pretty fed up with this because I thank you all for standing with us. I don't have like a, and I'm sorry if my voice is, I don't have a written out speech. I'm just going to point out some things that I'm upset about. I'm really frustrated because this quarantine is absurd. The North Carolina toolkit, I'm sorry, it's asinine. I heard the other side a couple times say, that the masks that forcing us to wear masks, or that that our parental choice is the ultimate. It's not the ultimate. That shouldn't be the ultimate. Actually, it is. I'm the parent. I can decide when my child can quarantine, and I'm going to decide that. And I'm appalled that I found out that a friend of mine who's here tonight, her high school or middle school, I can't remember which one, was sent home for quarantine. And when her mom knows that she's not sick, tried to bring her back, they wanted to call the sheriff on her. Disgusting. I am appalled. That is so frustrating. This is America. This is the land of the free. And I will tell you that I know another example. A friend of mine down the street, her kid, who's 7, was sent home for quarantine with a child that got COVID with 2 masks. Holy crap, pardon, but that's really just makes me so upset. It is my choice. I'm not here to tell you to thank you anymore. I'm done thanking. I'm done being polite. I'm frustrated. And what I'm going to say is that, one, I'm not going to mask my kid anymore. Okay, I'm the parent. I'm upset. Neither will my child, if I get that call from a nurse that says, your child needs to quarantine because she was in contact with someone. No, my child's going to go to school. And I dare someone to bring the sheriff to me. My lawyer will be waiting for you as well. I'm done with this. This is freedom. We have choice and we choose freedom. I'm not choosing tyranny anymore. This kit does not make any sense. I also know about a child who was told by the teacher that they would be rewarded if they put a mask on. Absurd. And I'm sorry, I'm emotional, but I'm frustrated. Losing sleep over this. I'm done with it. This is freedom. This is America, and that's it. I will no longer complain.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Deb Helms. And I think I'm being told that this will be our last speaker for the night. We have reached our 60 minutes. So Ms. Helms, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I get to close it out with no written speech. That's no pressure at all. Deb Helms, Union County, and I am now the proud parent of a UCPS student. She was enrolled at a charter school. We did remote kindergarten last year because she can't wear a mask because of her nosebleeds. If you recall from my previous other speeches, she couldn't wear a mask. So this year, we were so excited to be given the opportunity to sign her up for Union County Public Schools. And the last 2 weeks, the smile that I have seen on my child's face has warmed my heart, and it has made all of my sleepless nights reading the toolkit, sending emails, showing up at these meetings, crying tears. It has made it all worth it for me. We were still enrolled at our charter school prior to Union County starting because they were mask optional when they started. I got to see firsthand how ridiculous these quarantine procedures are. And today, she didn't go to school today. We spent the weekend outside enjoying our first taste of fall, having a bonfire, making s'mores. She had allergies when we woke up this morning. I was not going to send her to school to have her sent home for 14 days because she has allergies. We've all been clearing our throat in here tonight. That's just the way that it is. But the quarantine procedures are absolutely ridiculous. One of the previous speakers, she said, take your fight to the health department. I have sent emails to Dennis Joyner. I actually spoke earlier at the Board of County Commissioners meeting where Dennis Joyner was present. I spoke at the charter school board meeting last week where Dennis Joyner was present. I am taking my fight to the source of this ridiculous quarantine period. And we're talking about 5,000 students in quarantine. But are they really? If you've looked at social media, they're going to the aquatic center, they're going to Carowinds, they are enjoying an extra 2 weeks of a summer break. Are they really in quarantine? The DHHS, up until today, has not maintained the information as to how many of those children in their 15-minute exposure at school quarantine have contracted COVID-19. It could be because they have no way to trace that because these kids are out here living their life. But I saw at the charter school, different guidelines were being offered. They were being offered a shortened quarantine period. If this is a statewide thing, the rules should be the same across the state. If this is a Union County thing, it should be the same amongst all of the Union County schools. There should be no difference in the rules. There should be no rules. Like other speakers have also said, if you are sick, stay home. That's the basis of society. We've lost all common sense. On that note, let me say something ridiculous. If one child at school had lice, would we make the rest of them wear a shower cap? I hope not. Thank you for your time and all you've done.
Thank you very much. That does conclude our public comments for the evening. And we have had board members, we would like to take a 5-minute break. And we'll be back. Let's just call it 8:30, 8:31. We need to pick back up where we left off. So 5-minute break. Okay, we are back. Thank you for that small break after public comments. I would like to welcome Commissioner Stoney Rushing, who is attending our meeting tonight. We appreciate your attendance being here. I know you've had a busy day with your own board meeting, and we thank you for being here at our board meeting. That brings us to the open session meeting minutes for August 3rd, August 18, and August 31st.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. And now we'll have the superintendent's report. Dr. Houlihan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say to all of our families, our community, and our staff, welcome back to the new school year. We are in week 3 of the 2021-22 school year, and it has been so wonderful to see our kiddos back in the building. Since the first day of school, I've visited 28 schools. Our students and staff are extremely engaged. I want to say a big thank you to our principals, administrators, and staff for a job well done. And I also want to say a big thank you to our teachers and our support staff for your dedication to our great school system and for all that you're doing to jump in directly to work with our kids on high-level quality instruction. Tonight, as just passed by this school board, I want to publicly thank our Board of Education for approving a significant increase for our transportation and school nutrition services staff. These new rates will help us to recruit and retain our employees to serve our students and help address some of the challenges we have recently faced with staffing. With this 11.5% increase for bus drivers, we are now offering a starting rate of $16.75. We will now have the highest starting rate for bus drivers in our area. In addition, with the attendance and retention bonuses, drivers can earn up to $18 an hour. Our school nutrition services staff will receive an increase in the starting rate as well. That new rate is $15 per hour. We are going to be having a job fair for transportation, school nutrition, facilities, after-school program, and for instruction on Thursday, September 16th. We're going to release additional information tomorrow about the location, times, and details, so please stay tuned. And finally, please join me in congratulating, this is hot off the press, congratulating Weddington High School for winning the back-to-back 3A Wells Fargo Cups. This award is given to the best overall athletic program in the state. We are waiting for the High School Athletic Association to confirm details of the presentation of their trophy at a future Weddington High School football game. Congratulations to the Warriors, and thanks for keeping the Wells Fargo Cup in UCPS for multiple years. Board members, this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Houlihan. That is fantastic news. I love keeping that in Union County. So good job, Weddington. That brings us to the instructional accountability for 2020-21. We'll have an update. Dr. Breedlove.
First of all, good evening. I just want to thank the Board of Education for this opportunity tonight to speak to you and share with you the Union County Public Schools 2020-2021 Accountability Update. Joining me in this presentation are both Dr. Bowers, who's our Executive Director of Academics, and Dr. Jonathan Tyson, who is our Director of Accountability and Research. Dr. Tyson will review with you the UCPS composite accountability data, and after Dr. Tyson presents that data, I'll be able to share with you some key highlights, followed by our next steps, which will be shared by Dr. Bowers. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tyson for the presentation.
So good evening, everyone. So before we get started, I think it's important for us just to outline really the timeline of this past year. And you can see on the screen here on the first slide, if you recall, in March of 2021, North Carolina petitioned the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, to waive accountability for the 2021 school year. And so in March, March 26th, actually, they sent a letter to superintendents. And of course, we received that waiver letter, and it shows us that they were going to waive school identifications based on the school data that was produced at the end of the school year. And for you guys that have done this for a while, that's really our school performance grades. Then also the 95% participation requirement and school growth. Then last week, Senate Bill 654 was signed into law, and of course that replicated the federal waiver at the state of North Carolina level. And so what you're going to see tonight is information about the data, but I also want to be very clear, this is a statement from DPI in a presentation that I attended on August 25th, 2021. Dr. Tammy Howard, she read this, and I'd like to read this verbatim publicly tonight. The reporting of test data is to support local educators and parents in planning for instruction in the 21-22 school year. It is not intended to be an accountability report because accountability was waived. I just want to be clear, we recognize the nuances of schooling last year, and of course our schools did a great job with getting students in to participate, and you're going to see some highlights tonight. Dr. Breedlove will share those at the conclusion of the data that I share. School performance indicators really has not changed at the elementary and the middle school levels. You know that we test in EOG math, EOG reading or ELA reading, which stands for English Language Arts. We can also see the EOG science, math 1 when applicable, and that is for our accelerated middle school students, and then English learner progress. At the high schools, of course, you can see there are more factors and there are more indicators, math 1 and math 3, English 2, biology, ACT and the ACT work keys, math course rigor, English learner progress, and then of course, something we're all very proud of in Union County Public Schools is cohort graduation rate. So the accountability framework has changed slightly over the past year. If you remember, we used to have multiple indicators, but really they've moved to a 3-phase approach where a kid is either not proficient, which is a combination of the previous level 1 and 2, a grade level proficient, which we'll refer to tonight as GLP, that stands for grade level proficient, that is a level 3 and above, and that stands for sufficient command of subject matter, and then career and college readiness, which is students that demonstrate indicators suggesting the student is on track for a career and or college when they graduate, and those are levels 4 and 5. So on the screen, you can see the UCPS accountability snapshots. You can see I've got 2019, 2020 is blank. Of course, you remember that we had the federal waiver for the entire country. We did not even participate in EOGs or EOCs in the 2019, 2020 school year. But in 2021, you can see that our CCR, which is our career and college readiness percent of proficiency, was 46.6%. Our grade level proficiency for all EOCs and EOGs was 63%. Our ACT was 69.1% proficient. Our ACT work keys, 76.2. That was an increase over the past year. We'll talk about that a little more. I've got a graphic to demonstrate that. And our cohort graduation rate was 92.7%. Now, we do see a 0.3 decline, but I think that comes with the caveat. In 2019, 2020, remember that we were only allowed to hold our students accountable to the state minimum graduation requirements of 22. In Union County Public Schools, we require 28 credits. So in 2021, we returned to requiring 28 credits for graduation here in Union County Public Schools. If we look at elementary, as I move to the next slide, you can see I've got grades 3, 4, and 5 in the pane to your left, and you can see 2021, our grade 3 reading hovers between 56% proficient and 58% proficient. Our math in the middle column, you can see at the elementary level, grades 3, 4, and 5, the range is really between 63% proficient and almost 65% proficient for the 5th graders. And then our science, keep in mind, we only test science at the elementary level. In grade 5, you can see 71.3% proficient. As we move to the middle school and take a snapshot look at the middle school, we can see grades 6, 7, and 8 reading there on the left pane. We can see really hovers in grade 6 between 60% grade level proficient and 63% grade level proficient. Our middle school math, and we can look at middle school math, you see grades 6 and 7, 62 and 63% proficient. In grade 8 math, 53.3% proficient. It's worth noting that grade 8 math, that does not encompass any of our accelerated middle school students because they've already taken Math 1 and their Math 1 is captured there. When we look at science, we only test science in the middle school at grade 8, and we were 78.4% proficient. As we move to the EOCs, we now have 4 EOCs. Of course, Math 3 is an EOC that is required. That's an addition that's only 2 years old. And then we can see that Math 1, 44.5% proficient. English 2, 74.2% proficient. And that was actually an increase, a slight increase, but nevertheless, it's an increase to celebrate in a year where we were dealing with so many nuances associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. Biology at 60.7% proficient, and then Math 3, of course, you can see a slight increase there, 65.9% proficient. These ACT results, and I need to be clear with you guys, were from the spring of last year. These are incomplete results because students that may not have participated in the ACT last spring that are in the 11th grade who are now in the 12th grade, the Department of Public Instruction is going to provide those students a final opportunity in October to catch any students who may or who did not have the opportunity to participate. If they participated last spring, they're done. You only get one shot at it for free with the state of North Carolina. But if they did not participate, they'll have an opportunity in October, and those scores will be reported after those scores come back, and they will add to this. But as you can see, and I won't go through this column by column, but the composite, the science, the reading, the math, and the English subtest, each one of those, our average score is approximately 2 points higher than the state average across the board. I alluded to this earlier, but this is our work keys proficiency rates, and this is a chart that I've added. In the front, you can see the state average of proficiency, and then in the back, you can see our average of proficiency. And you can see there from 2018-19 to 2020-21, we did witness an increase in our trend there with work keys. So that's a testament to our CTE teachers, our CTE programming at the high school. And then this is the final slide that I want to share with you. This is not captured in accountability, but I think it's something neat for us to show. We can see in the front, the number across the board is the number of students that tested and scored a level 3, 4, or 5 on an AP exam. And we can see that consistently that has, we've seen increases there. But what's more important is you can see that we attempted 217 additional AP exams last school year. So with students competing for AP credit, which then translates to college credit when they get to a post-secondary educational opportunity. We did see a slight decline in the percent that made a level 3, 4, or 5, but we did increase the number of students that attempted those as well. So we've got a few highlights here on the screen. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Breedlove, and he's going to come back and talk about highlights before turning it over to Dr. Bowers at the end with next steps. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tyson. I think it's important also to note that every school system scores this past year took a significant hit. No one left unscathed. But even though that happened, I think it's important for us to look also at how did Union County Public Schools compare to the state as well as to other, the Big 12 or the 12 largest districts in which we compare ourselves to. As you can see on the screen, Union County Public Schools career and college ready proficiency rate was 17 percentage points higher than the state average. If you look at GLP, it was 17.6 percentage points higher than the state average. Union County Public Schools, percent of students meeting ACT benchmark, which is a 17 or higher on that benchmark, our score was 13.9 percentage points higher than the state average. Union County Public Schools percent of students meeting proficiency on the work keys assessment was 12.9 percentage points higher than the state average. And then Union County Public Schools cohort graduation rate was 4.1 percentage points higher than the state average as well. And then lastly, on this particular slide, Union County Public Schools outperformed the largest 12 LEAs on 44 of 49 key indicators across the board when it comes to accountability. I think that's pretty important to note.
Dr. Breedlove, if you can go back to the accountability snapshot, there's one more data point I want to make sure that we publicly recognize.
Is this, which, let me see. Got it.
Right there.
It is.
So the third were deemed proficient on all EOCs and EOGs taken. I think it's important context to understand that historically, Union County Public Schools, that ranking in terms of how do we stack up against the entire state of North Carolina, historically on that indicator, we have been back and forth between number 3 and number 4 historically. I do want the board and the public to know that based on the analysis of our team, for the first time in perhaps a long time, if not ever, UCPS this past year, that 63% ranks first amongst all 115 school districts in North Carolina, which is an astounding measurement, in my opinion, and a huge testament to our staff, our teachers, our families, our students for the ability to navigate through the pandemic and to continue to put teaching and learning as number 1. So just wanted to point out that final indicator that was just analyzed today. And we're very, very pleased about that and pleased about the overall performance. While it's not where we want to be at all, and we know that we have work to do. When you look at how the school system is continuing to lead all things teaching and learning in the state, there is strong evidence that suggests that the strategies and the efforts that we had last year really paid off for our students.
Can you go to the last slide that you just had up? Can you send that to us? 'Cause
Yes,
we don't-
ma'am.
We don't have that in our packet.
We
and I'd
added
like-
that at the last second. Yes, ma'am.
and
I will definitely send
appreciate
that.
I like the highlights, but if you could send it to us separately, that would be something that we could put up. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely put it on board docs for anyone in the community that wants to see it.
I will update that ASAP. All right, I will turn it over to Dr. Bowers. Next steps, moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Breedlove. So I think Dr. Houlihan said it best when he said we have work to do. You know, I think it's what an accomplishment to sit here and look back and say nearly 2 out of every 3 students was proficient from a grade level proficiency standpoint last year. And that is a testament to the work put forth by a tremendous number of people. Starts with the Board of Education, starts with Dr. Houlihan district leadership, then it trickles down to our schools. I think our teachers, certainly, that is representative of the work they did. I think our school administrators, it's the work that was done there. It's our support personnel who get kids to school. It's our child nutrition staff who feed the kids. It's our custodial staff keeping buildings clean. It is a collective school effort. And so that right there in itself says the power of the group and what we're able to accomplish. But there is work to be done, and there are some things we really want to kind of target this year moving forward. One of the ones we have to double down on our intervention and our tutoring. We have to make sure that we're providing the best supports for children that have experienced learning loss. And that is something our schools are putting together plans and preparing to support students each and every day. Something else we're going to do is we determine that during these unique times, there are certain segments of our population that experience perhaps a greater impact than others. We need to look at resources for our English learners. We need to be able to provide the necessary supports there to be able to bridge the gaps that have been created. We need to look at our portrait of a graduate, make sure we align that with our instructional framework. And are we making sure that we're truly reaching that North Star as children move from grades K through 12 and ensuring that there's alignment every step of the way. We want to make sure that our literacy efforts are supported. As the state of North Carolina is about to embark on the sciences of reading and what's about to take place with literacy across the elementary landscape, we want to make sure that our local framework is aligned to the work being done at the state. And we can support our teachers, we can support our administrators, and we can support students as they work to enhance their literacy efforts. We want to make sure that we take some of the lessons learned from summer camp. I think if you followed us on the Twitter or the social media, you saw that there was such learning, there was fun, there was engagement. And we want to make sure that we reintroduce that to school as children are coming back into the building this year. We continue to look at some of our efforts and what we have taking place. We want to make sure that we support our principals and our school leaders with being able to kind of commit time to the core instruction that takes place at the school level. And we're doing everything we can to be that central services support mechanism that they need. Our secondary schools, we understand that there are a lot of things that have happened with reacclimation to the school. We need to make sure that we have intervention blocks, enrichment blocks established for students as they start to reintroduce to that in-person instruction model. And we want to make sure that, as you saw with some of the results we had, we doubled down on our efforts with ACT, and we're giving every child an opportunity to have college readiness by the time they leave UCPS. And we continue to focus on those graduation rates, because 92.7% is a monumental achievement in these times, but 100% is our goal. So those are the things we certainly want to work towards.
Again, thank you to our academics team, Dr. Breelove, under your leadership. Thank you for your great work, and to our staff, thank you. We're happy to take any questions or comments from board members, and I would just ask Dr. Breelove to make sure this full presentation is put into board docs this evening for the general public as well as for the board.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. As far as the EOGs from last year and the previous year, was the rigor still the same as both years? They weren't?
Yes, sir. The tests were the same as they
Okay.
have been in previous years.
Do we have a list of the AP courses by school in terms of how they did by school?
I don't have that with me, but I certainly can. We can work on putting that together and getting that out to the full board.
Okay. And then, I mean, even though overall it was, not a great year, but there were some schools that actually had improved scores from previous. So are we like using best practices?
We are in our meetings with our leveled principal meetings, elementary, middle, and high school. We're already addressing those and seeing what was done differently in case we are in similar situations, and just finding out what those best practices were, and hitting home once again some of the great work that was done in our summer learning camp, and a lot to learn there as well.
And when will we get those summer learning scores? Because didn't they have to test?
We have our summer learning camp.
Yes, so we have some of the results from summer learning. Of course, the Read to Achieve was primary for the third graders that were in reading camp, but every third grader, of course, were not in reading camp for Read to Achieve. But we do have those scores, and we can make those available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What can we as the community help in your efforts, Union County Public Schools? Someone made a statement, the power of the group, and I think that is a phenomenal statement, because all of us have to find a place in making sure that we improve the test scores, as well as the dynamic of all of our schools here in Union County Public Schools. So what can we do as a community, those that are listening? There are pastors, there are nonprofit organizations. How can we help to be a piece of the puzzle in improving these scores for this school year?
I think our first effort is a system-wide effort around tutoring and getting involved with supporting students at all levels, whether it's elementary, middle, and high. First in reading, and second in math. And it comes back to that core. As a community, we need to rally behind our schools and rally behind the efforts that they are putting forward, and reaching out to the individual schools in your community and seeing what their needs are. Each school is going to have slightly different needs, but it's all going to be really about closing that learning loss gap that we saw in the data that's there, so we can as quickly as possible, get back to traditional level of success for our students.
Yes, sir.
I'll provide two more comments. Pastor Kirkpatrick, number one, I do want the general public to understand the fact that the road to recovery is still going to take some time. This is not going to be something where you're going to see a year from now where all of a sudden we're back to pre-pandemic data points. So I think that we need to understand that we're working as hard as we can to get back to where we were pre-COVID, but it's still going to take some time. So we ask for your patience and understanding of that. And number two, we're still determining in-person and virtual opportunities for volunteers in schools, specifically with initiatives like Read With You. We had one school comes to mind that piloted a virtual option last year that was kind of homegrown, that we're looking to replicate if individuals are interested in that. So there are going to be volunteer opportunities for community members that will have direct impact on things like mentorship and literacy and math. So we want to make sure that folks are staying engaged with what those opportunities are. And the best thing to do is call your local school to say, how can we help you? Because there, as Dr. Breedlove said, they're all going to have needs. So those are two other points I'd just like to make. Thank you.
I'll just say to all three of you, thank you very much, because the past year and a half with COVID, I know has been an extreme challenge for all of us, and especially for you and the academic team. So thank you for everything that you've done, because while we may not be thrilled with some of the numbers and reports tonight, we have to remember that our students started out with 1 day a week, went to 2 days a week, 4 days a week, and in the final grading period of school, they were given the opportunity for 5 days a week. And in my personal opinion, just my opinion, I can't imagine what the other counties on Plan C, what their scores must look like, because I have complete faith in the education process that students have an opportunity to acquire in Union County Public Schools with our teachers and our schools and our administrators. So although we may not be thrilled with some of the numbers tonight, I'm very proud of what our teachers and our 53 schools and your academic team, our instructional coaches, were able to accomplish in the middle of a global pandemic. So on behalf of this board, I just want to say thank you. And I know you'll put together a plan to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good words, good words.
I have one more quick question too. Just looking at the data for the grade level reading proficiency for different grades, the few schools that actually went up, like third grade, fourth grade, some of them went up. There's no common denominator between schools. It's just grade level. Do you have any indication why that is?
Well, certainly we put in a lot of effort around our literacy framework this past year and continue moving forward. But, it's our teachers and the work that they've done. And, what we tried to do across the board is have as many mitigating elements as we could find to help every student move forward. And it just, depending on the students, that particular test, and how many, I will also say that Union County Public Schools did an awesome job of getting as many students into test as we could. Being above 95% on the number of students who were eligible to test last year and actually taking the test, also says a tremendous effort for our school system, because not only were students did, obviously we have a long way to go, but students did fairly well, but the amount of students that we tested far exceeded many of the other school districts across the board. But to your point, we still have work to do, but finding out some of those best practices, making sure that we have resources for students who may or may not be in school that particular day, and that continued effort. And coming back to Reverend Kirkpatrick, just getting as much support from our community and getting involved and Read With You and other things that we're doing is going to continue to help us shrink that gap.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to the COVID-19 update. Mr. McCraw.
Thank you, Ms. Merrill. Good evening, board. Good evening, Dr. Houlihan. Tonight, I come with a COVID update for Union County and Union County schools. As you will hear, the numbers in Union County and Union County schools remain high. The goal of UCPS throughout the COVID pandemic has been to keep students in the building, making health and safety our #1 priority. UCPS staff continues to consult with Dennis Joyner and public health staff 2 times a week. I talk with him daily, giving him updates, and he provides me with updates as far as Union County data. Here are a few of the numbers that I want to share with you tonight. The trends continue upward at this time. The current positivity rate as of about noon today was 16.7% for Union County. As of August 18th, when I presented to you the first time, the positivity rate was 13.9%. The other thing is the 7-day average for new COVID cases as of today around lunchtime was 153.1 new COVID cases per day. On August 18th, when I presented to you the first time, the 7-day average of new cases was 125.4 COVID cases per day. The data from Union County Public Schools dashboard, which is updated on Friday each week, shows from last week, from August 30th until September 3rd, we reported 367 impactful cases of COVID for students and staff. This resulted in 5,410 students and staff being quarantined for that week. The prior week, we had 176 positive impactful cases of COVID. That resulted in 1,873 quarantines. Hospitalizations at Atrium Union. Atrium Union covers region, Chesterfield County, Anson County, Richmond, Mecklenburg County. It is a regional hospital. People can go to Atrium Union. Today's numbers, as of noon today, 101 is the inpatient census. 60 of those patients are COVID related. That means that the COVID inpatient census is about 33%. Union County Health Director continues to recommend and points us to the Strong Schools Toolkit. That's all the guidance for the pandemic related to the requirements, recommendations, all of that. He also continues to recommend UCPS follow the Strong Schools Public Health Toolkit, and specifically the face covering guidance, the 14-day quarantine guidance, and all the other recommendations in the toolkit. Thank you for allowing me to give you an update on COVID-19. This concludes that. Do you all have any questions about that?
I have a question. We had some speakers in public comments talk about, I'm concerned, or not concerned, I have a question about the number of non-COVID quarantine students. In other words, students quarantined due to contact tracing. If you can provide those numbers since the beginning of the dashboard, and how many of those quarantines have at some point tested positive for COVID?
So our nurse supervisor, we actually talked about this earlier today. There's been overall, not just impactful cases, but 1,009 total COVID positive cases reported to us for staff and students. Of those 1,009, there's been 110 people who have been close contacts that resulted in a positive test later on.
And that's students and staff?
That is students and staff.
So out of the, and what is the total number of those quarantined due to social tracing?
That's the total of all the positive cases.
No, not positive cases, but anybody who's been quarantined due to social tracing, not having had COVID, but due to the social tracing. And then how many of those turned positive as a part of their quarantine? Am I clear on that?
I'm sorry. Nurse Supervisor Wendy Nilsson. She's got a little bit of data that I didn't have in my packet. I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Nilsson.
Yes. So you would just naturally be able to subtract the number of impactful cases from the quarantine numbers. So the total number of cases, I'll just clarify that. We had 1,009 reported, that students and staff since the 10th of August. That's when we started last year. And that's when we started documenting. And so the same date was used this year. We've had 1,009 reported cases. Now, we do define differently impactful. That means that they've been in our buildings during their infectious period. So that makes a little bit of difference. So you would subtract the number of cases from the total quarantines. That would give you how many have been staff and students, in the difference between the quarantine and their positive cases. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will have a quarantine guidelines conversation. We'll move to quarantine guidelines.
Yes, ma'am. So, Ms. Merrill, currently UCPS follows the quarantine guidance listed in the Strong Schools Toolkit. Currently, our quarantine guidance is 14 days for everyone if you're a close contact. We do follow the guidance of our local public health director and public health officials as required in this document. So currently, we can apply the 10 and 7 day quarantine in certain situations, but a classroom setting, it is difficult because we do not meet all the non-pharmaceutical interventions such as face coverings and 6 feet physical distancing. It says you should meet those things. So we follow the 14-day quarantine guidance that comes from the toolkit. That is what the health director recommends for us at this time.
For everyone who wants to understand, I'm going to ask a question that I already know the answer to, but we need to have a public conversation about it. Who sets the number of days a student either exposed or positive? Who determines the number of days that a student has to be on quarantine?
That guidance comes from our local public health director and public health officials.
Are there state statutes that by law gives that authority to the health director?
Yes, ma'am, there is. We follow that guidance because there is a communicable disease law that requires us to follow that guidance.
So I want everyone to understand, I'll ask this question. Can the Board of Education determine the days of a quarantine?
I'm definitely not an attorney, but my understanding from
And if you would like to defer that question to Mrs. Morris, you may.
I will defer it to her because she is the legal expert. And
Mrs. Morris, can a Board of Education set the quarantine guidelines?
Well, I want to be careful not to give the board legal advice in open session. The statute does rest the authority for quarantine with state and local health officials, not the Board of Education.
So the number of days that a student is required to be on quarantine, whether they test positive or sent home because of an exposure to a positive, that number of days is set by Dennis Joyner, our Union County Public Health Director.
I can answer that one. Yes, that is set by our local public health director. 14 days is the guidance at this time.
From Dennis Joyner?
Yeah, from the local public health director,
Okay.
Mr. Joyner. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jared. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Ms. Merrill.
Madam Chair, I have a question if I may.
Yes.
So due to our status of being mask optional, we have to stick with 14 days, correct?
No.
Of quarantine.
So in my conversations with Mr. Joyner, there are two non-pharmaceutical interventions that need to be met if we were to adopt a 10 and 7 day across the board. One of those is face coverings. The other is 6 foot physical distancing. In classrooms, our goal between student to student interaction is 3 feet. It just says should. And that's what this guidance says. You should meet those things, but.
Okay. So the recommendation, not recommendation, but the toolkit, and from Mr. Joyner, they're saying that quarantine can be either 7 days or 10 days if the Union County Public Schools had a mask mandate, and that would help to eliminate so many days of quarantining.
We've not had that specific conversation, but if we did meet one or both of those non-pharmaceutical interventions, we would have that conversation with him.
Are there any other questions that board members have for Mr. McCraw about quarantine guidelines?
I don't have any.
If not, we will move to the academic support
One
plan.
last one, I'm sorry. If the student is of age and is vaccinated, they are exempt from quarantine when identified through social distancing?
As long as they're asymptomatic, they would be an exception to quarantine.
And the 90 days positive previous, within the 90-day window of a previous positive.
The 3 months, if you've been positive within 3 months, you would be an exception as well.
Okay.
As long as you're asymptomatic.
Asymptomatic,
Yes, sir.
Just to make sure we're covering everything. The toolkit changed a week or so ago, and I plead with them to tell us what the changes are instead of spending 45 minutes going through the document to find the changes. It's ridiculous. But anyways, they talked about potential antibodies exemptions, but we're not doing that in this county, correct?
We are not at this time. We really do not have the capacity it would take to accept antibody testing and review all the antibody testing that would be required for us to review. And I've talked to Mr. Joyner about that. I've talked to Ms. Nilsson about that. It would take great capacity to review all of those things that we would receive.
Oh, Madam Chair, I didn't have a question, but I did have something to say.
Yes.
Over the last 18 months, not only have the citizens of our county, state, and nation, but the citizens of the entire world have been through one of the worst times in history. This history, Madam Chair, is still being written. Over the last few months, we have come face to face with major decisions concerning our Team UCPS family. These decisions have been made the more difficult because of the competing interests, or shall we say, sides. The pro-masking side and the non-masking side, as well as get or not get the vaccine shot. Not since the Civil War has our nation been more divided. That division, Madam Chair, hails from information concerning science. As my Webster's Dictionary of 1970 declares, that science is defined as original state of fact, knowing, knowledge often, as opposed to intuition, belief, etc. There are several more meanings, but I'll just read number 3. A branch of knowledge or study, especially one concerned with establishing and systematizing facts, principles, and methods as by experiments and hypotheses, as such as the science of music. Meaning 2 is a real highlight of what is not happening. It is not happening, Madam Chair, because of information suppressionists. From that same Webster's, suppressors are defined as one or who or that which suppress, subdues, or prevents utterance, disclosure, or communication. Today, Madam Chair, it is called cancel culture. It is in the midst of this information suppression that true debate has become a casualty of this COVID-19 war. Just a mere few years ago, some of the great minds of science worked together on a plethora of projects. Now some of these great minds have been pushed to the side for having differing views on masking, vaccines, and quarantining. the issue at hand this evening. We hear of all the recommendations from the CDC, WHO, and others that have been accepted as the way to deal with COVID-19. Even now, we are being guided by their view, but the numbers keep coming from Europe to Asia, Africa, South America, and elsewhere. The informational suppressionists have marginalized the many other studies that have spoken to these issues. Studies that began as far back as 2009 and even up till the Louisville study that looked into these mask mandates on a state-by-state basis. Their conclusion found that masking mandates use are not associated with lower SARS-CoV-2 spread. As reported on September 6, 2021, the Denmark's News in English, confirmed by the Danish Health Authority, here is a portion of their reporting concerning their reaction to quarantining. Their education minister said, "There is no doubt that sending children home when a single pupil is infected has consequences for schooling, and it is very disruptive for families. The new guidelines will come into effect as soon as possible," the minister said. We have received many emails on this subject matter. Most are as far apart from one another as can be found. However, Madam Chair, there is a clear and consistent message in most of them. That is, please keep our children in school. Rather they are for or against, all want this massive quarantining of healthy students to end. I will add to that healthy people, because they're all not students. Over this Labor Day weekend, we saw we got a taste of normalcy. All or one of us watched or were at many of the college football games. What a joy to see citizens enjoying themselves together. Tens of thousands of them. And yet, we have our healthy people home for 14 days at a time. It must end, Madam Chair. We must begin the journey to normalcy. With that, I make a motion to stop sending healthy people home, and that the quarantine protocols be for sick people only, and that we immediately bring our healthy people back to school and their workplace.
So board, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments?
I do. So from what, and I don't want to ruin anything that we talked about, but it's against the law. And we can argue moral laws and more. I just can't get into that. It's against the law. And that 130A, 144, and 145 are clear about this. So I cannot support it.
Any other questions or comments for the motion on the floor? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Oh.
What the motion is? It was quite a long dissertation there. I'm not clear on what the actual motion is.
Mr. Reverend Benton, would you please read the motion?
Sure, no problem. Motion to stop sending healthy people home, and that the quarantine protocols be for sick people only, and that we immediately bring our healthy people back to school and their workplace. Madam Chair,
do we have any clear direction on what that actually means, or is that going to be up? Are we going to subject our staff to interpretation of what that is? Because that sounds like a very vague motion. I'm very unclear.
No, it's not vague. We have over 5,000 students and workers home that are healthy.
Clarify, this is what I thought your motion was, that if you're positive case, then you go home and you isolate, but there's no quarantine for students that don't have any symptoms. Is that
Absolutely right.
so? Basically, no quarantine unless you're symptomatic.
Quarantining should be for sick people, not healthy people.
I'm just clarifying. Okay, so that is what you're saying.
Absolutely, that's what
Okay.
I'm saying. Sick people should not be sent home. If a healthy person, sick people should be sent home. If a person is healthy and they're not sick, they shouldn't be home.
I agree with what you're saying, except that we don't make that determination. The health department makes that determination. I hear everything that you're saying. I do. But for me, it's the law. So I get it.
I appreciate that, Madam Vice Chair, but I just can't sit another moment and not do anything to those 5,000 people that are healthy, that they have no recourse. It's like that there's nothing that they can do. I want them to know that we can at least try.
There's a recourse.
Well, the recourse is 14 days.
Or the recourse is to do a mask required, and then there's no quarantine at all. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's not really fair to say there's no recourse, because I think there is one. Whether or not this board is going to do that or not, I don't know. But there's a recourse.
But no, go ahead. Well, that recourse is one that this board has spoke to. We've spoken to that, and we are a mass optional county. So I'm speaking about this motion in the context of where we are right now.
Before we call the vote, I want to remind everyone of the advice we received in council in closed session. And so I just want to remind you of the phone calls Kathy and I made today for outside legal advice. The motion and the second has been discussed. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the motion, raise your hand.
Nay.
Okay, so the motion fails 8-1. Next on the agenda, we have an academic support plan update from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, if I could, before we move off the
Sure.
agenda, I would also like to make a motion.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that, as per our new policy, where we have to revisit the mask requirement every 30 days or every month.
And Mr. Morial, that is next on the agenda. Do you want to make the motion now or when we get to that new legislation?
Well, my motion is still on masks, so, which I believe that last one was on quarantining.
Okay, that's letter E, but, okay.
Shall I wait?
You allow it to wait.
If you don't mind waiting until we get to face coverings, I think that would be a better time, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
And we will go straight to you as soon as we get to letter E. So next on the agenda is an academic support plan update from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as the board remembers, you all voted back in August to support a 3-tiered plan to offer academic support for students who may find themselves in quarantine. Tier 1 is obviously working directly with your classroom teacher, school administration on any assistance that you may need. Tier 2 is new to this year, which is allowing teachers to work after school and on weekends to provide tutoring support. And then Tier 3, we're looking at the hiring or procuring of what we refer to as district tutors that would be available. I do want to let the board know that talking with Dr. Harris today, We are still in process on that tier 3. We have not been able to implement that because we're still trying to find people. We are looking at third-party partners that have virtual tutoring platforms that if we decide that it's within budget and we want to move in that direction, we would bring that to a relevant committee for approval, but we're not quite there yet and hope to be there this month. I do want to say that we have evidence of schools implementing their tier 2 plan. And I want to say thank you to our principals and teachers for that. I think the biggest lesson we've learned in the last 2 weeks is over communicating to parents what resources are available if you find your child in quarantine. That has been the number one lesson that we've learned, that we're continuing to say to our administrators. We have to have plans to put that into our system.
And I think that's one of the biggest complaints we're hearing from parents about their children being in quarantine is nobody's contacting them with respect to those type of the tiers. And it's disappointing that the tier 3, I have to say that it's difficult to hire people at any level, at anything in our district. And we've seen that over and over again. So it's disappointing, but every business is dealing with the same things.
And I kind of think about this, every start to the school year, you always have challenges. I mean, with transportation and with child nutrition, with whatever it is, we're only 2 weeks in. So I think as we go through this and have this plan in place, and as schools begin to implement and get familiar with what the system looks like, we will make some drastic improvements.
Are there any questions for Dr. Houlihan about the tier 1, tier 2? We already know the challenges with tier 3. If there are no other questions, we will move to a county health department update. I want to update the board because at our last meeting, Mr. Price requested that Mr. McCraw extend an invitation to the Union County Health Director, Mr. Dennis Joyner, to please come to this meeting to walk us through the metrics or his metrics so that we could have an opportunity because for the last 18 months, this board has not had any communication with the Union County Health Director. So because of Mr. Price's request, and I had to set the agenda. Kathy and I were setting the agenda on Friday, and we were alerted by Mr. McCraw that Mr. Joyner had declined our invitation to be here tonight to meet with our board. He was not able to be here because at 6 o'clock, the Board of County Commissioners was receiving a presentation from Mr. Joyner. Our commissioner is waving to us, so he's to blame. So Mr. Joyner did not feel that he could be here at 7 o'clock for our meeting because he had to be at the county at 6 o'clock. But I did explain that with an hour of public comments, we probably would not get to him until 8 or 8:30. And I pleaded with an opportunity to invite our health director here. And he did not feel comfortable being here. And so for the board's information, after receiving that email that he would not be here, I reached out to the Board of County Commissioners Chair, Mr. Richard Helms, to ask him to walk him through the fact that his 6 o'clock meeting would give Mr. Joyner plenty of time at the county meeting, and that we probably would not get to him on our agenda after an hour of public comments and our accountability report. Said it would probably be about 8 or 8:30 if he would please reconsider so that this board could have an opportunity to meet the Union County Health Director, hear firsthand information instead of playing pass the word. And we know how successful that is in grade school. And the answer again was no. I reached out to the county manager to see if he would understand the importance of this board needing to meet with the Union County Health Director. And so I had a very nice conversation with County Manager Mark Watson, and he was very thorough in trying to understand the request. And I was very thorough in explaining that this was a heavy burden for this board to carry, and that we had never asked him to be here before. We allowed this messenger thing that was very successful last year, but we have hit a road bump. And I explained again that there would be plenty of time for Dennis Joyner to present at the county, and then come help us understand these metrics and what he was seeing, so that we could have an exchange of information, ask him questions, he could share his professional advice. Again, that was denied. And so Mark Watson did extend an invitation to me and Kathy Heintel to come privately meet with him, the deputy county manager, Michelle Lancaster, and Dennis Joyner, the health director, today in their boardroom in a private meeting at 9 o'clock in the government center. So I absolutely, if they were not able to accommodate our meeting, Kathy and I accepted the invitation, and we went to ask a lot of the questions that we've been hearing from this board and all of the parents and administrators and bus drivers. We accepted their invitation to go meet privately with those three. And when we arrived today, there was a room full of people. We had the staff from the Department of Health Services. We had their lead nurse, Michelle McGrath, I believe. We had their epidemiologist, Kyle Hildebrand. We had Dennis Joyner. We had County Commissioner Richard Helms came. County Commissioner Dennis Rape, Vice Chair, was there. And Deputy County Manager Michelle Lancaster. So we had a room full. And so we started out the meeting with Mark Watson making sure that our understanding that Kathy and I needed to understand, so I'm conveying this to you tonight, that we have no authority to set quarantine. He said that Michelle Lancaster and Dennis Joyner were the only two in Union County that could do quarantine, not this Board of Education. So those ground rules were set at the very beginning of the meeting. And we understood and received that because Kathy and I were very familiar with the general statutes 130A-144 and 145, and we knew what he was saying to be true, that the county health director and then him saying that Michelle Lancaster had the same authority. They could make mandates for the county, and they set quarantine for public health. And that is something that has been in place long before COVID-19. So we all agreed upon that and moved forward with our meeting. So I pleaded with Mr. Joyner and his staff that sending 5,410 people, students and staff home was detrimental to the education process for Union County Public Schools. And I took them to the toolkit that this board has been charged with following. This board is charged with following the Safe Schools Toolkit. So after they explained to me what our purview is and what their purview is, I asked them, would that we were there this morning to ask him to consider other options that were listed in the toolkit less than 14 days to get our students back in the classroom. And we went to the Safe Schools Toolkit, page 16, that says, the CDC continues to recommend quarantine for 14 days after last exposure. However, as of December 2nd, 2020, the CDC has offered options to reduce the duration of quarantine in either of the following two scenarios. Option 1 is 14 days. Next option, if you need to reduce the duration of quarantines, your second option is 10 days of quarantine have been completed and no symptoms have been reported during daily at-home monitoring. Third option, 7 days of quarantine have been completed, no symptoms have been reported during daily at-home monitoring, and the individual has received a result of a negative antigen or PCR molecular test on a test taken no earlier than day 5 of quarantine. So I pleaded with the Union County Health Director and his staff, the deputy county manager and the county manager, to please consider, because it's in their purview, to not do 14 days, but to consider letting Union County Public Schools do the 10-day quarantine or the 7-day quarantine, and on day 5, allow students to take a test, and if their test is negative and they have no symptoms, those children would be allowed back in the classroom. And they unequivocally informed Mrs. Heintel and me that they would not allow 10 days, 7 days, or a negative test, that they would not move from 14 days. So Mrs. Heintel asked, based on information we've heard at a neighboring county, that if the numbers are as high as they are saying that they are, we've seen the numbers, and Mr. McCraw just shared the COVID update. We asked, why has Mrs. Lancaster and the health director not done a mask mandate for the county? And there was a little bit of a chuckle, and we were told that they would not be considering a mask mandate for the county. So that's when we proceeded to share with them that, 7 or 8 hours of the day, children are in our care. But when they get out of school at 2 o'clock or 3:15, they're in the county's care. They're at Kate Skate, they're at child care, they are riding four-wheelers, watching Netflix series, piled up playing video games. And I pleaded with them over and over, do you believe our schools are safe? Have we not had a good relationship and a good track record all school year that we took good care of our children in the schools last year, and we have the experience, we know how to do this? Or do they not believe in community spread? They do believe in community spread, and they do believe the safest place for a child to be is in the classrooms. So I begged him to explain to me how a 14-day hall pass for students to pile up together and be given an excuse to miss school for 14 days because they were an exposure Did they not understand those children, because they're not in the classroom where they need to be, that they were in the community during those 14 days doing what teenagers and students do, going to the convenience store, going and, watching TV with their friends, sleepovers, bonfires, parties, football games, going to see their siblings at the university, traveling, having a great time, going to the beach, going to the mountains. We've seen all the pictures because that's what teenagers do. And I asked them, I said, would you please reconsider the 14-day hall pass? Would you please consider option 2, 10-day, option 3, 7-day, an opportunity to take a test on day 5, and if it's negative and they have no symptoms, please let these children come back to the classroom. They said no, that the numbers were too high, that but they did not feel comfortable doing a countywide mask mandate that is in their purview, that they wanted us to do it in the schools. We asked them, out of the 5,410 staff and students that were sent home on quarantine, how many have tested positive for COVID? And they informed us that there had been 99. As of this morning at 9 or 10 o'clock, they said that out of 5,410, there had been 99 that did result in a COVID positive. So that leaves you with approximately 5,300 that are asymptomatic and sent home that would love an opportunity. I'm referring to my meeting and what we were told at 9 o'clock this morning, not 9:50 tonight. So as of 9 o'clock this morning, now if the county health director is wrong, then he's wrong. But we were told today that there had been 99. So with that being said, they said that they would not consider anything less than a 14-day quarantine, but they didn't feel comfortable doing a mask mandate for the county either. So when the kids get out of school at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, it's on the county's clock, not our clock. And we know where these kids are getting it from because we know the contact tracing. We get that report every day. We know about the football games. We know about the parties. We know about the trips to the mountains and the beach and the vacations and everything. We know where the positives are coming from. I also did address the reports that we have been getting over the last several weeks from the epidemiologists, and I addressed that there are many counties, and I'm not going to share. You have the report. I have shared it with you. There are surrounding counties that around August 16th did reverse from mask optional to mask required. And I showed them the data from those school districts that did go to mask required, and their COVID positive was higher than Union County Public Schools. Their positives were higher for their students, and in many cases, their positives were higher for their employees. So I asked them again, I said, do you trust Union County Public Schools to be a good partner and do the right thing with managing COVID-19? And they said they would not waver from a 14-day. They would not consider the toolkit's other options, and they would not consider a 5-day test. And that if we get back down to 3 to 5%, That would be a sweet spot, I believe, is what they said. If we get back down to 3 to 5%, they would consider letting go into 10 or 7 days. We had they also shared that the reason that they are sticking to 14 days and not offering the other options in the toolkit as defined by the CDC, that they need to focus on hospital impact, positivity rates, the 7-day per 100,000, the transmission levels, and I believe we talked about the 7-day testing, even when children are in gym, PE, lunch, and the need for those, I guess, to go on quarantine. And then we had an in-depth conversation about students that have an IEP, 504, speech issues that are on record, speech delays, asthma. For any students that have been to the doctor that have open sores that have developed from long period of mask use, and emails that we have received where these students have gone repeatedly to the doctor to have to try different medications to make the sores on their face heal. They said that if those parents in those one-off situations did provide a doctor's note, that they would waive that student from having to wear a mask in order for those type of situations to heal, and that they would accept doctor's notes for someone that does have a speech delay or dyslexia, that would need to be able to see their teacher speak to them. So the county was very understanding and receptive that they would waive masks for those students. I believe Mrs. Heintel brought up the inconsistency on quarantines for our athletes. I know that has been a conversation that many of us are extremely concerned that our athletes are held to a different standard with quarantine than other standards, and they did not waive on that either. I'm looking at my notes here to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. At the end of the day, I want to report to this board that we did meet for approximately an hour and 40 minutes. And at no point would anyone be willing to be here tonight for a Q&A. And they gave me the opportunity to relay this update to our board. And so when we walked out of the room today, it was left that they would not offer anything less than a 14-day quarantine. And then I believe I was on the phone. I got phone calls from Raleigh today from our state legislators, and I was on the phone today. Representative Dean Arp has called me multiple times today from all the emails and phone calls that he and our representatives and Senator Todd Johnson are being bombarded with because of having 5,410 healthy children sitting at home on a 14-day quarantine. So I was on the phone with Representative Dean Arp answering his questions. And so I missed a call from Mark Watson, but he was able to speak to Mrs. Heintel. So I will end my conversations here as an update to this board, and I will turn it over to Mrs. Heintel.
So just to add to the conversation, the county manager called just before our meeting this afternoon, and he said that the local health department has not issued a communicable disease or an infectious disease measure, and there is none in place right now. That they would ask us that they would ask us to follow the toolkit and apply it to the current situation, and to apply the data to the current situation, but they wouldn't give us any options, whether it was the 7, 10, or 14 days, that it was up to the school's discretion to pick the right one based on the data, applying the data to the current situation. That's from Mr. Watson. The question that I have, and I think some of my colleagues has, is that the law and the toolkit say differently. The toolkit says that schools should follow the recommendations of their local public health department regarding quarantine. Local public health authorities make the final decisions about how long quarantine should last in the communities they serve. So we're going to have to look into this a little bit more. Again, it was at 5:15 just before we were getting ready to go into closed session. So we weren't able to go back and ask some questions and to follow up on some of the issues that were brought up.
I will also remind the board members that when Mrs. Heintel and I reached for outside legal advice today, we were pointed also to page 17 that states the exact same thing. Person can return to school after completing up to 14 days of quarantine. The 14 days of quarantine begin after the last known close contact with COVID-19 positive individual. Alternatively, the person may complete a 10-day quarantine if the person is not presenting symptoms of COVID-19 after daily at-home monitoring, or they may complete a 7-day quarantine if they report no symptoms during daily at-home monitoring and the individual has received results of a negative antigen or PCR molecular test on a test taken no earlier than day 5 of quarantine. They may return to school. So, I don't want to discuss legal advice or advice from counsel in open session. That is a closed session conversation, but I did share with you that we were advised that the county manager, the deputy county manager told us today that we were reading the toolkit and these guidelines wrong, and our outside attorney said, has said that is not true. We are reading it correctly. These are the options that the health director can choose. And these are things in the toolkit that we can follow to run safe schools in North Carolina.
One of the other things that we've talked about too is that our nurses and employees are getting burned out with quarantines and contact tracing and the phone calls that have to happen with respect to contact tracing. And that's a difficult thing that we have to deal with. It's a lot on them all the time to be doing this. So
above and beyond what they were hired to do.
Ms. Heintel, could I ask you a question? I hate to put you on the hot seat. To the best, according to your statement, and I know it's to your best recollection with the county manager, because obviously he has not emailed or followed up with a text to document your conversation. But if I'm reading what you're saying, it's basically he was saying, giving approval for us to choose to implement other quarantine options as long as they are in the toolkit. Now, my first question is...
Yes, to that first.
Okay. So is the county manager determined, since he's over all of the county government, this specifically says the health department, would the county manager qualify as a person of authority to be able to make that decision in our minds?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they can. I don't know it about.
Did he make a comment as far as he was speaking for the health director, or are you sure the health director's okay with this? Or I know this is.
I don't recall that if he
Okay,
did. And I don't want to say the wrong thing at the wrong time, but I think that he was speaking on behalf of the
county government, at the very least.
Right.
Yes.
But I don't know if with respect to the law, I don't know if they can give somebody that, can they pass it off to us?
Okay.
That's what we talked.
So-
Mr. Sykes, we do have a county commissioner here that was with the county manager, the deputy county manager, and the health director tonight. If you want to ask him a question, perhaps.
I would very much like so, and especially since the two county commissioners were present at your meeting, it sounds very relevant to ask since the commissioners are obviously involved in this discussion now, I would like to hear Mr. Rushing if would like to go up to the podium to give us his thoughts on the matter from his viewpoint and his discussions with the county manager or other government officials.
How about that?
There.
I should know this by now. We got the same green light.
Yes, you should.
Thank you for the opportunity. And like you, I was in a meeting by phone after your meeting with the same people, except for we could not have three commissioners in the thing at the same time to not break quorum. So I had asked to be a part of the meeting with you, but because we already had two commissioners there, we decided after your meeting that those same people in that room would call and have that discussion with me of what you talked about. A lot of what you said is exactly what they said to me. However, I had some disagreements with what they were saying. One thing that I have trouble with is that if we're going to put this on you, when the Board of County Commissioners could very well issue a countywide mask mandate and solve the problem, it's not fair that we pass the buck to you and require you to do it when our own staff and our health director has not and has expressed no interest in coming to us and asking for a countywide mask mandate. The governor could pass a mask mandate and we could all have to live under it. You're saying that, you have control of the children, maybe 33% in the school year, you have control of the children 33% of the time. The county has control of the children 100% of the time. When they're at your school, our health director is still their health director. When they're at home, our health director is still their health director. So those were the discussions I had with them afterwards. They, again, did not agree with what I was saying, but I got the same phone call that you got prior to our meeting, and it was said that, has there been anything sent to you all in writing indicating that we only accept option one, that the county health department only accepts option one?
Just Mr. Joyner's verbal mandate today for that he would own, that he, in his purview per session law 130A, 144, and 145, that he would only agree to a 14-day quarantine.
So after your meeting and my meeting, it's my understanding that the county manager met with the health department staff and his team, and they had a meeting the rest of the afternoon, I guess, and they went over the arguments that we had made, and that they may have found some error in something that their opinion, because it's their opinion, just like it's your opinion. But this is a text I got as I was sitting in this meeting. I sent a text to the county manager and said, we may need to discuss a countywide mask mandate at our next meeting, depending on tonight's outcome at the Board of Education. Because again, if these children are in such distress at school, they're in that same distress at home. And everybody else in the county is, the senior citizens, everybody else. So if our health department wants to make the recommendation for you, they should make the recommendation to us as well. And his response was, we remain committed to working with them to find a solution. The solution I see is that if you choose, the option you choose is your option, and that's your vote. So I don't want them saying that the school board picked it. We didn't pick it. The school board voted to support option one, option two, or option three. It's my understanding that if either of those options, that the county will be supportive.
Do you
But I-
agree or disagree that the Board of Education or the Union County Health Director establishes
The
quarantine?
Union County Health Director establishes quarantine. And we-
Why is that?
Statute.
So you're letting our board know that we cannot pick and choose our own quarantine?
You can pick your option, but no matter what option you pick, the county health director could step in at any time and change that. So I would, again, we're not asked by him to do a mask mandate. So why are you asked by him to do a mask mandate? Not once have we been, we were approached, I'll give you a precedence. Last year, we were approached by the deputy manager and the health director to possibly do a countywide shutdown, like Mecklenburg and other counties had done. We chose not to do that. We said, no, we're not going to shut businesses down in Union County. Later, the governor said he shut the county down. He shut all counties down, which makes more sense that you do it from a countywide perspective, because Union County line, everything doesn't end at the Union County line. These children have family in Anson County, Stanley County, wherever. So we chose to let somebody above us do it. So again, if we have a problem with it, why is our health director not coming to the Board of County Commissioners and asking us to mandate masks? Why do our people not get contact traced and sent home for 14 days? And you can say, well, county employees have to wear a mask, but I didn't wear a mask when I went into the government center tonight. And if you go to pay your taxes, they're not going to run you out of there with a stick. They're not wearing a mask. They're not going to, there's no teeth to it. And that's some of the discussion that I had with them. So again, I would not look at all of you as a fellow elected official. And we've talked about the equality of these boards. You have your job and we have ours. But I would not look at you and ask you to do something that I wouldn't be willing to discuss and vote on myself. And I would not vote personally for a mask mandate for Union County. I've been in safe, biosecure facilities my whole life. I worked in an industry where we had to take showers to go in, take showers coming out. I've been involved in that. I've given more vaccines, I guarantee you, than any person in this room. Matter of fact, I've given more vaccines than all of you put together. I can promise you. But not anti-vaccine, not anti-science. But I've never been asked to wear a mask in any biosecure environment that I've been in. So again, I think it's your decision and what you do. If you decide to go with option 3, I know as a county commissioner, I would stand behind you on that. And I believe from my discussions with the county manager, they're leaving that option to you. And if you choose that, if the health director doesn't stand behind you, you better have a good reason for not doing it.
My position would be to abide by the quarantine recommendations in the toolkit. Not just one in particular, but all of them. There may be families that choose to quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yes.
There may be some families that don't want to have their child take the test.
Right.
That's fine too. I'm thinking that from your conversation and Ms. Heintel's, without something in writing, because we have to do something tonight, and I think that influences what we're going to do. What I'm hearing is, as long as we're saying we're abiding by the toolkit and the quarantine options provided in, unless Mr. Joyner changes his mind or situations change or what have you, we are being given liberty, if this board so chooses, to implement all the options in the toolkit. Is that a fair statement?
That's my understanding. If you choose to go with option 1, or if you choose to go with option 3, then that's your decision.
Well, I'll just say
if not, it's not a decision.
Well, they're really leaving us in the lurch here.
Right.
I mean,
that's the key. That's the key to what I was told by the county manager, is you have nothing in writing. You have no direction in writing.
We have nothing that says no, you can't do it.
You have nothing that says no, and you have nothing that says yes from the county.
And our
That's what I
interpretation of the law is that we need to have something that says yes.
As, well,
The law is that we need to have something that says yes
as well,
at some point.
what you have is based on verbal discussions this morning.
I guess for me, it's can the county health department give somebody else their authority to make a decision? That's my question. Can they delegate their authority to us? There's the word, finally. That's the question.
You have, and our health department has guidelines. And those guidelines are issued.
We have nothing in writing.
You have guidelines.
144 and 145 do not say that the health director can delegate their responsibility to another body.
We don't have any emails.
Yeah. So the health director, and my understanding through the county manager, who has you don't want us to hire and fire the health director. You don't, because of politics. Let's say that you had a board that disagreed with you or agreed with you. You don't want us telling the health director he's hired or fired based on that.
The only request that Mrs. Heintel and I had this morning at 9 o'clock was in order not to have 5,410 students and staff sent home on quarantine after they told us at that point in time, 99 had tested positive. Our only request to the health director this morning was because we can't choose quarantine, would he please consider the 10-day option or the 7-day option and allow students to go on day 5, and if they're negative and asymptomatic, come back to the classroom. And he said, no, they have to be out of school for 14 days before they can return.
So if you choose option 3, the only thing he can do is overrule you.
Well, we don't have to choose option 3. We just say we're going to implement the options provided in the toolkit. We don't have to pick 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah.
As long as it's in there, it's supposed to be kosher.
So now we're
Right.
going to ask the nurses when they call to contact trace, if they're contacting tracing. Well, you can pick behind curtain A, curtain B. I mean, you guys, we cannot manage that.
All
I
right.
mean, I understand that you want to give people choices, but they can always stay home longer if they think that they're getting symptoms or something like that. But asking the contact tracers to do this is just, we can't.
My daughter goes to the charter school at Union Academy. She was quarantined for 14 days because she sat near a girl whose brother tested positive. She went on quarantine for maybe 10 days. She went and got a negative test, and she was allowed back in school. There's no rhyme or reason why she was allowed back in school early.
Because I'm going to ask, I think the answer, that at that point in time, UA had a mask mandate.
I'm not sure. This was 1st of August. I think they changed it.
They had a mask mandate at that point in time.
I can tell you, as a human being, it makes no sense.
But I'm telling you that both the state health department and the local health department both said, if you're mask mandate, then you can use the other things. But right now you can't use.
But our outside attorney advised us today that interpretation of the toolkit is not true.
And I think that's what I heard from the county manager, is maybe they had that same opinion, or that they had come to that conclusion. Maybe seeking advice from somebody, I don't know if they sought advice from, but that's my understanding from a brief conversation that you had, and I encouraged him to call you, and he didn't get in touch with you. Yeah, and he never got in touch with you.
The county manager did call me, but I was on the phone because Dean Arp had called, and I'm going to take Dean Arp's call.
Right, I understand.
Because he was providing us help.
Wasn't able to get hold of him because you guys were also having a meeting.
Right,
So
and
I just
I'm in
think we
complete
have.
agreement that Dennis Joyner should have come over here as soon as our meeting.
I just think that I do, and I think that it's
you're
going to be
looking for a reason to
difficult
mask
for this
up, I'm not gonna
board
give
to
it to
make
you.
a decision because we don't know all the decision points.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if you're looking for a reason to mask up, I wouldn't, I would say to you that if we're not willing to do it and are being asked to do it, then you shouldn't be willing to be asked to do something we wouldn't ask ourselves to do.
Could I offer something that may help this move along? Because I think Mr. Morial wants to get to
Are y'all done with me?
I'm
or
sorry,
you
go ahead.
You got more questions for me?
And
Thank y'all.
thank you, Commissioner
and
Rushing.
listen, it was very entertaining. We don't get that anymore. And
Well, we'll be glad to
necessarily
send
want
it your way.
Well, it should
it's
be.
coming
but
your
I don't know
way.
why we're
Yeah.
getting it that way. I mean, I thought there was an auction going on. There's all kinds of stuff going on over here. And the comments are quite brutal. We used to have those. But we haven't had it in a while. And, God
Well,
bless y'all. God bless y'all for the
we
thankless
do
job.
thank you because you weren't in the room
Right.
this morning at 9:00 when we pleaded with someone from the county to please be here tonight
Yeah.
because your meeting was at 6, our meeting was at 7,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we would have public comments for an hour.
Right.
We knew that there would be opportunity to have this conversation. So I thank
Someone
you very
should have
much
been,
for
someone
being here.
besides me should have been here. I just came on a whim, and somebody on our staff should have been here to answer these questions instead of me. Thank you.
If I could offer something that helped move this along, I think Mr. Morial wants to make a motion about going mask mandated.
But we did ask Mr. Morial, could we get to so that is our county update. Let's move to E, review of face covering policy pursuant to Session Law 2021-130, also known as Senate Bill 654. What the Cliff's Note version is that our Board of Education is now required that we have to vote on face coverings each month at our board meetings. So I will turn it over to Mr. Morial.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could please request Mr. McGraw to come up to the podium, please, for a second.
Yes, sir, Mr. Morial.
Hey there. So I was hoping that you could, so you started off your presentation with a statement about kind of what the mission is as far as keeping students safe and in the classroom. Could you just reiterate what that is?
So our first priority is health and safety of our students and our staff and visitors to our campus. I think we all agree that the best place for learning to take place is in the classroom. That's what we've done throughout the pandemic. We've tried to keep students in our buildings, staff in our buildings. That is the best place for learning to take place.
Agreed. All right, and refresh me on the numbers, please. You said, is it 99 confirmed cases?
You're talking about secondary cases or overall cases? So last week.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last week from August 30th until September the 3rd, we had 367 positive cases for students and staff. That resulted in 5,410 quarantines for students and staff during that week.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, that's all. I just wanted to refresh everybody on those numbers and kind of what our mission and our civil duty is as members of this board. And I would like to reiterate that we need to keep students in the classroom. That is the best place that they learn. And with that, I would like to make a motion that we, beginning, I guess, effective, if we can, as early as tomorrow, but I'll let staff determine when we can actually implement this. I would like to make masks mandatory in all UCPS buildings, with, again, the goal being to keep kids in classroom as much as we can, and this will be revisited per our policy at the next board meeting.
I second.
So we have a motion to make mask mandatory, a mask mandate, and we do have a second. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. Dr. Houlihan, could I get your input on this?
So here's the way I look at this. entering into any situation, I always want to look at the what I call the rules of engagement. And whether I agree or disagree or accept or don't accept, I think the one strategy left that we have that will ensure that more of our kids stay in school is a mask requirement. That is the one remaining strategy that we have left to our purview. I think you've heard a lot of discussion tonight about that. I am concerned about the numbers of kids that are in quarantine. And I do believe that, our number one job is to educate our children. And the best way for that to happen is in school. And so I think that, that's the decision for the board tonight. And that is the one mitigation strategy that's left for us to consider.
Question, does the motion include with a mask mandate, the exemption for quarantining, or is it?
My understanding is in the toolkit is that if we were mask mandate, there is no quarantine except in situations where the students and staff have masks off, like the lunchroom or the PE. And I guess it doesn't apply to staff, correct? Okay.
And it doesn't help our athletes.
Create any confusion here with what this motion is. I believe we had some confusion at the last meeting. So this motion is for a mask mandate effective as soon as staff can put this into place for all Union County public school buildings. And if somebody wants to make a second motion after this, after this one, and talk about what we do with the current people that are in quarantine, I'd welcome that.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. If this motion is unsuccessful, I will be offering a motion to go mask optional, to accept as an approval the options provided in the Safe Schools Toolkit for other options for quarantining, and to address Ms. Heintel's concerns about our nurses. I would also include a third part in my motion that effective immediately, UCPS employees, including nurses and staff, are no longer responsible for any type of contact
We need to
tracing.
deal with this motion first.
Well,
so-
I'd like to explain to folks that is my intent to place a motion so that they know what the choices are.
So we should not have two different
I'm
motions
not
on the
making a
floor. at one
motion, I'm stating my intent to
Intent.
make a
Okay, so-
motion if this one is failing.
Okay, so if, Reverend Kirkpatrick, did you have a comment or a question?
too.
Okay.
Do you want to go
Okay.
first? Or do you want me to go first? I have a comment. Okay. I just want to say, I am not saying that masks work. I am not saying that I'm fearful of anything with respect to COVID. I am not saying that I'm following the science. It's not based on cases or deaths or hospitalization. This is the only way to get kids in the schools. And 5,400 students sitting at home is not what we want. Last year, all we could talk about was getting kids in school and having them in school. And we saw the accountability standards and we did a great job, but it was hard last year not having kids in the classroom. I think it's important that we do that. Our employees are exhausted. We need to do something to change this. Under the rules from the health department, we can't change the length of the quarantine. We're still finding out. And it really just doesn't matter. The only thing we're left with is mask mandate for a month to see if we can get over this. There is some data out there that shows that we are peaking. Not so much in Union County, but in North Carolina, we're peaking with the Delta variant. And if that is happening, then maybe going for a month with masks. And I don't like them. I don't want to do it. But this is the only way we can do it. This is what the toolkit allows us to do. And I don't know any other way to do it. And that's kind of where I am. The kids I can't say it enough times. The kids have to be in schools and we don't have any other choice.
Are there any other comments? Are we ready to,
Madam
I
Chair.
will do a roll call for the vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to go on record of saying that if our governor wanted a mask mandate for schools, they should have had one. If our county wanted a mask mandate for schools, they should have had one. But instead, they've taken and literally squoze this school district into a position where it rests with us, where they get to say, oh, we didn't order a mask mandate. And I just think it's shameful.
Okay, so we have a motion and a set.
If I could add one more comment, Ms. Merrill.
Yes.
I just want to, so there was some discussion about decreasing the amount of time that quarantine would be effective. And again, I would like to reiterate that 7 days, which would be the minimum, I feel is still unacceptable, and it's an injustice to our students, which is again why I made the motion.
Okay, so I'm going to call the vote, and I'm going to begin with District 1, Reverend Kirkpatrick.
For the recommendations.
Okay. District 2, Matt Helms.
No.
District 3, Gary Sides.
No.
District 4, Melissa Merrill. I vote no. District 5, Joe Morial.
Yes.
District 6, Kathy Heintel.
Yes.
At large, Todd Price.
No.
At large, Jimmy Benchin.
No.
At large, Sarah May.
Yes.
So the vote is 5-4. So the motion fails. The motion fails.
Madam Chair, I'd like to offer a motion that Union County remain mask optional and accept the county health directors and county managers' proposal to allow the implementation of all quarantine options stated in the Strong Schools Toolkit. And number 3, that Union County employees, staff, administrators, and nurses no longer be required to provide social tracing duties.
Can you make those two separate motions, please?
We'll do 2 votes. If
That's fine. I'll withdraw the third part.
So a motion is on the floor.
It's to keep mask watch. Right? That's the
The motion on the
is to
floor.
remain mask optional. The second part is to accept the county manager's approval and implement all of the different quarantine options as spelled out in this toolkit.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah. I'll second for discussion purposes, Madam Chair. The question I have on the motion is that if we stay as we are, mask optional, that leaves us, the toolkit is what we're already going by, right? So, that will already going by the toolkit.
No, we are currently restricted to only one option in the toolkit. And my interpretation for purposes of this motion, Mr. Rushing's comments and Ms. Heintel's comments, are that the county manager is giving us the opportunity to utilize all of the quarantine options. 10 days of quarantine that have been completed and no symptoms have been reported during daily at-home monitoring. 7 days of quarantine have been completed, no symptoms have been reported during daily home monitoring, and the individual has received results of a negative antigen or PCR test taken no earlier than day 5 of
That's why he's
quarantine.
going to make a different motion, a separate motion.
But so under your plan, just so I understand, 7 days, the kids will still be out of school for 7 days, they'll still be out of 10 days, and they'll still be out of 14 days, whichever one we pick or whichever one that's allowed, or I just want to make sure I understand.
7 or 10 calendar days, which I assume would include a weekend in there somewhere. So it wouldn't necessarily be 7 days of school or 10 days of school.
So 5 days of school, or
Well, I
I'll
mean,
give you,
yeah,
I'll
however
give
it
you
falls.
5 or 8, but they're still going to be out of school.
The options,
Okay.
as stated in the toolkit, yes.
If there are no other questions or comments for the motion and the second, I'm going to call a vote.
So we won't have a problem with just the 14 days anymore. Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Well, that's what
I'm accepting the approval of the county manager based on 2 conversations. Yes, we have nothing in writing, but I'm basing it on my interpretation as part of this motion is they're saying, okay, if you choose to utilize, as long as it's in the toolkit, the different quarantine options, any one of these 3, then that's okay by us.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. If there are no other questions or comments, I'm going to begin the roll call. District 1, Reverend Kirkpatrick, do you vote yes or no for the motion?
Nay.
Nay. District 2, Matt Helms.
Yes.
District 3, Gary Sides.
Yes.
District 4, Melissa Merrill, yes. District 5, Joe Morial.
Nay.
District 6, Kathy Heintel.
No.
At large, Todd Price.
Yes.
At large, Jimmy Benchin.
Yes.
At large, Sarah May.
No.
So the motion passes 5-4 to
Madam-
continue with mask optional.
Madam Chairman, I would also like to offer a motion that effective immediately, Union County Public Schools staff, including nurses, administrators, staff, no longer are responsible for contact tracing, effective tomorrow.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Can the chair second?
So just so everybody understands the conversation, that when my conversation with Mark Watson with respect to doing these different, to allowing us to pick the options to do, is that they will continue to do the data and we will continue to do the contact tracing. So I don't know if that's, again, without having him here and asking questions, I don't know what the package is. But that is what he said to me, is that we'll continue to give you the data like we always do. We'll still work together and you guys will still do the contact tracing.
Well, I guess my motion is made because if we are still subject to something in writing from the county health department approving all the different quarantine tools, then I think that position needs to be on the table as well. So, you know, if they,
So is it,
Want to work
is
with
your
us.
motion conditional?
I would be glad to revisit, if this motion is approved, I'll be glad to and would request we revisit this.
Or we could table it until someone from the county
Yes.
clarifies
And I
If,
apologize
their
for not saying that
purview and my
earlier,
but in our purview.
and I apologize for not repeating that, but in closed session, I did say that we would keep doing the contact tracing, but.
Okay, I must have missed that
Okay,
part.
and I apologize.
I'll be
Right.
glad to table that part of the motion based on my only contingent is my concerns about the additional burden on staff. Because now they're going to be looking at tests.
What I understood from the county was that in hindsight, they do agree that that as long as we're following the toolkit, they are now willing to deviate from the 14 days. I think I'm clear on that. I wish they were here to answer. It is my understanding, and please help me out here, but it is my understanding that it is the county's job to manage quarantine. Union County Public School employees are not supposed to be managing quarantine, is the legal advice I received today.
And by doing the contact tracing, that is considered actively participating
In doing the
quarantine.
county's job, correct?
And that's the only reason I did second, because I don't want our awesome nurses to be caught in a catch-22. And that's the only reason. So we need clarity on that. I'm not going to have them out there on a whim, not knowing, or it's just.
Is there some way that we can get answers and reconvene tomorrow at a Zoom meeting to get this taken care of? Because we don't know the answers to the questions that we need to know.
That is a great
Is the consensus of the
suggestion.
group, it'd be better for me to table my second motion about the nurse contact tracing until we have some clarity from
Yes.
the county? Is that the consensus?
Except you just approved a motion where now we're tripling their workload.
Double the triple.
Yeah. So I think we need an answer quick now,
Absolutely.
or we're going to lose nurses.
Workload of staff. You had a chance to vote just a few minutes ago.
Well, we were voting on the face covering option, whether we were going to be mask required or mask optional. So I felt like we had two votes addressing item E, review face covering policy pursuant to Session Law 2021-130, Senate Bill 654. We had the first motion that was to go to an immediate mask mandate. That motion failed 4-5. Then we had a face covering to remain mask optional, and that passed 5-4. So I feel like we addressed the statute.
There was a comment made that there was, genuine concern about the workload of staff. And my only comment was, if there was a genuine concern, you had a chance to already vote for that, and you failed. So.
I'm sorry, do I need?
Well, I don't think that's a fair characterization of just because we didn't vote to mask mandate that we don't care about the workload of staff. There's a bigger issue here about mask and being extorted to go mask mandate in order to not quarantine.
Mr. Sides, what is the bigger? I'm asking. What is the bigger issue?
That we are being held hostage to go mask optional in order to keep our kids in school, unmask mandated to keep our kids in school. And that's been the comments of just about everybody that has voted for it, that is our only option, supposedly, to keep kids in.
So I agree with Joe, because we had an opportunity to help to alleviate some of our nurses and the workload. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We're in the midst of a season that none of us have ever experienced. So a lot of us are going to have to do above and beyond what probably we were not expected to do. But when we allow our children and staff to continue to go to school and not give them a mandate that, again, we have to vote every month. Okay, so the option was put on the table for us to mandate our children and staff to wear masks. Next month we will vote on it. But some individuals have an agenda that is, and you can sit here and say all day long, you're for the kids and what have you, but at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. This is an opportunity for us to help save our children and our families, to help with our staff. If we're concerned about them, then you just have to do some things that you don't want to do. No one, if you asked him, likes wearing a mask. It's not something favorable, all right? But we're doing it for the sake of ourselves and for humanity. And this is the second time that we've had this option. And we have, for whatever reason, I cannot sit around here and say what your reason is, but I know it's a reason that the vote that we did today, and I know that some individuals had a challenge with it in the beginning, but what they did was they looked beyond and saw the greater good of what we're trying to do, and that is to keep kids in school. Dr. Breelove gave us a presentation about our students and about how we're wanting to get their academics to a place, and we know it's not going to take overnight, but we know that if they're in school, that's going to help. We know that. And we keep going through these games and these circles when we have an opportunity to put our pride aside or put whatever agenda we have to say, you know what, let's see how this will work and what the outcome will be by the next meeting. And again, this is what we've done. So I apologize to the teachers and the staff and the nurses. I really do.
Reverend Kirkpatrick, to add a little bit more to what you just said there, I mean, talking about last year and how we were trying to, like, we just made a comment how proud we were to get kids back into school last year, because that's the best place that they learn. And we just did them a disservice.
It's being spoken almost as if that there is not a constituency of people who don't want to be masked, and that's being looked at as, you know, we're just masked up and let's get on down the road. That in itself is a consideration. It's not an agenda. Is not someone's pride or ego. You know, it's you know, lives as well. I mean, this whole world, you know, the Europeans, they've really settled the mask issue. Most of them, they don't have. No, I'm talking right now, Joe. I'm talking right now. They don't have this concern. You know,
Mr. Morial, with all due respect, we heard your position. It would be fair for Reverend Benson to be able to give his position.
You know, I mean, it's almost like shut up and put a mask on, and it's not like that.
Speaking for myself, I have had teachers, mechanics, bus drivers, administrators, hundreds and hundreds of parents that have asked me to be their voice for mask optional. So this has nothing to do with politics other than constituents reaching out to me, bus drivers, administrators, teacher after teacher after teacher, and I've had nurses reach out to me, and they have asked me to vote mask optional, and that they wanted the choice, that it should not be a universal mask mandate. I have also had constituents reach out to me to mandate that our nurses and all of our employees be vaccinated. And I told them that I couldn't support that. So my concern is the slippery slope that once we, go to a universal mask mandate, then they're going to mandate that every employee be vaccinated. Then there's going to be every student has to be vaccinated. And again, my vote is for the people that elected me to sit in this seat in 2014 and 18 to be their voice. And I trust that you are your community's voice. You are your community's voice. I am my community's voice. And I voted for one thing: the teachers, the employees, and the parents that asked me to please allow them freedom of choice and not do a universal mandate. So that is how Melissa Merrill voted. And I do not appreciate any accusations that I voted for any other reason than hearing my community.
I'm very particular and I'm very specific. So if I'm talking to a specific person, I will address them. So a lot of times I believe, and I was always taught that a hit dog will bark. So at the end of the day, I did not call anybody's name. So when you make that comment and you look at me, you're referring to me. So again, I say, if I have to say something specifically or to address someone specifically, Madam Chair, I will do that. I don't make innuendos and I do not speak undercover. Okay, well, I guess you must be a mind reader. Well, it must have been referring to you.
Just think that we should be an example for students, so we can have a discussion and disagree without having,
Absolutely.
without calling out people or without, and I just think that it's important to have. I don't like the whole thing about it being politics and all those kind of things. I don't agree with that. I just think that for the most part, we've had a discussion without, and disagreed, but not been nasty about it. Not that I'm saying anyone was nasty. I'm just simply saying.
Well, this is a very difficult issue, and there's some very heartfelt positions. So I respect my colleagues that wanted to. I respect my colleagues that felt necessary to vote for mask mandatory in order to end the quarantine. It is unfortunate that that was the only option that would get us to that point. I can't go that far though, and being 5'4", it's tough. And this is a very emotional issue. Unfortunately, we are going to continue to grapple with it. But I think we can do it, as Ms. Heintel said, in a professional manner. We can disagree, we can debate, and then we vote, and then the majority, the 5+, whatever it is, that's the way it goes until the vote is again contrary to that. So I understand the very strong emotions on this issue, and just for the public out there, I just hope that
Oh, you do, sorry.
So I have a question, board members, and I'll really speak to Mr. Sides and possibly ask you for a different action. So based on the last motion that was just passed, I agree on if the board wants to go into mask optional, that's one part of that motion, correct?
Correct.
The second part is that we will follow the toolkit with regards to the quarantine as per deemed by the county manager, correct?
all quarantine options provided in the toolkit are available.
Okay. So again, we've heard that the general statute says that discretion is held by the health department director. And so before we proceed with the second part of that motion, I would ask that we get some clarity from some legal clarity on, does the county manager have the legal authority without anything in writing to give that to this board to make that decision?
So-
Because I do not, I do not want to say to our employees, you now have to determine which of this toolkit you use within the quarantine. That will be very difficult to manage and implement.
Let me make a clarifying motion perhaps that will help. Let's delay implementation of those other options in the toolkit until we have a confirmation from the appropriate county official in writing that it is appropriate to proceed with all of the quarantine options available under the toolkit. So we will not implement anything until we have a confirmation in writing in some form, email, text. Well, I prefer email, letter, what have you, confirming.
Who
But that-
determines that? Who determines that it's enough in the letter
What do you mean?
or the email? So what exactly does the email have to say? I mean, if the board is making a motion and you guys passed it, and now you have to go back to it, is what specifically has to be in the email that would make you feel comfortable? What would need, and who makes that determination? Or does the board get together again and make that determination? I said earlier that we should table it until tomorrow and when we had more information on it. Because
And that can still be tabled, but we were required to vote on a face covering tonight. We've completed that task.
we have to do it once a month. It doesn't have to happen today, does it?
But we haven't. This is our monthly meeting. And so tonight we had to address Session Law 2021-130 and Senate Bill 654. This was an action item on face coverings. So we can check that off tonight.
All right, what would make staff more comfortable? Delaying implementation, removing that from the motion, a new motion, removing that portion altogether until we have a written approval to utilize all of the quarantine options in the toolkit.
My request would be that the board revisit the last motion, which is separating mask optional from the second part of the toolkit and those recommendations. The second part is what we need guidance on. That is what I'm asking that we consider to be tabled.
So I think we need to get if I'm hearing you correctly, then we need to get something in writing from the Union County Health Director and County Manager, something in writing according to their purview of what they're going to recommend for the quarantine. They're going to put that in writing. And when we receive that, we could hold a Zoom meeting or another in-person meeting.
And at the same time, if pertinent, revisit the staff and nurse issue, if that comes into play.
To me, this action item is, are we going to be face mask required? Or are we going to be face mask optional?
Well, we voted on that.
And we voted on that.
Right.
It's the other stuff that I would say we still need to get clarification on. That's what I'm saying.
But I do think the full, like you said, the full board should come back and see what.
After we have something in writing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh, Michelle's.
I was just going to say, I think you need a motion to reconsider then the portion of the motion, which was to follow all of the quarantine pieces of the toolkit. So that would need to be made by somebody in the majority. Well, that we would come back.
Reconvene.
We would reconvene once we have confirmation from the appropriate county official. The statute does say the health director, not the county manager. So we need to see who we can get that from, but it would be a motion to reconsider that portion, and it need to be made by somebody in the majority.
I'll make a motion to reconsider that portion of the motion to be revisited at a later time.
Second.
okay. All those, I'm just going to do it one by one to be consistent. District 1, what's your vote?
What are we voting on?
As I understand,
Taking off following the toolkit, following all the options in the toolkit. He's removing that.
So the
So there's no motion needed because we're already mask optional, right?
Well, the issue is that the motion said that you would remain mask optional, but that you would open all opportunities for quarantine, leaving it basically up to staff to decide the quarantine. And at this point, we don't know that there is the official authority from the health director for us to make any decisions under the 14 days. So the motion is to reconsider that, removing that portion of the motion.
So the motion is to remove the second part of the motion.
Correct.
And so that we can table the protocol until we receive something in writing from the Union County Health Director.
So then the motion that was passed was that you'd stick with mask optional with 14-day quarantine until we come back and hear from the county.
That is my understanding.
Do we want to set a time limit as far as for them to respond? I'm not going to sit 2 or 3 weeks for them to. Tomorrow?
They have asked that our legal counsel put something in writing, and we have said that and he has agreed that he will do that tomorrow morning. So I would say, I would suggest that they have to put something in writing by tomorrow as well. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to take the second part of Gary's original motion off. We're going to table that until we receive something in the next 24 hours or tomorrow business day from the Union County Health Director. That is a motion and a second. So, so District 1, do you approve or not approve?
Approve.
For the motion, which yay or nay?
Okay. District 2?
Yeah.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4? Yay. District 5?
Nay.
District 6?
Yay.
Todd Price at large?
Yay.
Jimmy Benchen at large?
Yay.
Sarah May at large. Okay, so the motion passes 8-1. And this board will, as soon as we hear from the county, I will let the board members know, and we will decide if we want to have an in-person meeting or if we want to have a Zoom meeting, considering everyone's work schedules. So with that being said, let's move to policies for review. I will turn it over to Mrs. Morris.
There's good evening. There's 3 policies on the agenda for your review. Policy 2-3, settlement of claims, policy 5-4, extracurricular activities and interscholastic athletics, and policy 6-2, parent organizations. If anyone has any questions about those or concerns, I'm available to address those with you tonight. Thank you.
Board comments?
I have one. Dr. Houlihan, during his superintendent report, talked about our bus drivers and our school nutrition staff, which is all awesome stuff. But I want everybody to know that in our finance committee meeting, when was that? A couple weeks ago, we discussed that other categories of employees would be getting raises or stipend increases or whatever. So I don't want it to think that anybody to think that we're stopping with those 2 categories. We're looking at teachers getting supplement increases, nurses, psychologists, and social workers getting increased supplements. We're also talking about clerical staff. Help me out. Mechanics in transportation, bookkeepers, data managers, technology. So I just want everyone to know that we took these 2, but everybody's raises will be retroactive to the beginning of the school year for that category of employees. I just wanted to say that, sorry.
And real quick, Madam Chair, I just want to say to, every board member, agreement is always not necessary, and it doesn't mean we're against each other. Differing views is what makes us who we are. So I just want to make sure that if I've said anything tonight that caused anyone upsetness, I apologize.
Madam Chair, if I may, Reverend Benson, he kind of opened up that door for me, and I appreciate it. I think Kathy made a comment, and she said that we are supposed to pretty much provide the example, and that is something that I try my best to live by. Let me apologize to you, Madam Chair. I made a statement not referring to you as a dog, but the statement is one that I think we all know what it means. And along with Reverend Benson, let me apologize to you if I know that came out of a place of frustration, and it comes from a place of passion. I have great upbringing, and so as I've said on many occasions that my blood runs through this county. I stand on what I say. I stand on how I feel. But let me apologize to you for making that statement and referring that to you, if I may.
Absolutely. I too will apologize if you were not referring to me. I apologize if I have said anything offensive tonight. I know that all of our emotions are running high. We have been asked to do the impossible. We have been asked to do someone else's job. Basically, someone passed their responsibilities to us, and I'm not sure that they had the legal authority to do that. Reverend Kirkpatrick, I have great respect for you. We've talked about our Christian faith, the fact that I was in ministry before I was elected to the Board of Education, and I know that we do have common ground. And because of the emails and the names and the attacks that I and others have received, I did feel like that was directed at me. And so I apologize if you were directing it at someone else and that was not meant for me. So that will not happen again. And I hope you can understand, you've seen the emails and the social media attacks and the name calling and the berating. And so I think we do have common ground, and I hope that we can get to that very soon. Are there any other board comments? Hearing none, are there any announcements?
The Facilities Committee will meet on September 23rd at 9 a.m. The Finance Committee will meet at 8 a.m. on the 28th. Is that correct? Via Zoom. And again, we're not avoiding COVID or anything like that. Members of our board have jobs, and it's easier to have Zoom meeting for committees. The Board of County Commissioners don't have committees, so it's difficult for people to make it there. The other thing is appeals for Panel C is the 9th and the 23rd. Do we have any on the 9th? Oh, awesome. I mean, yeah. Thank you. So nothing on the 9th, but put it on your calendar for the 23rd. And if it happens on the 23rd, we're going to have to move the Facilities Committee meeting if we need to.
Okay. Yep. Strategic Planning, Information Technology, and Transportation is scheduled to meet Wednesday, the 22nd, here at the PDC at 7:30 a.m.
7:30.
Policy meets 9 o'clock on the 22nd here at PDC.
Oh, we're in person?
I think that was the preference if we follow SPIT and they're in
That's fine.
person.
I'm
we
good
do
with
in
that. I
person.
just wanted,
Okay.
you're right, you did say that. I apologize.
If there are no other announcements, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.